there, jerkfaces. It's your boy Andy, and you're watching Nocturnal Transmissions, brought to you by the Circle of Jerks podcast. It's our weekly live stream where we talk about news and current events, and of course our movie review. With me, as ever, is the homeboy Rob.
What's going on, everybody?
Yeah, we got something different for you guys tonight. Because I know we said I said we talk about like news and current events, but the current events and the news is not really getting it up to not to be disgusting or nothing. It's just not getting
Greta Thunberg and Twitter controversies or whatever other BS that's like, it seems like it's the same freaking story every day. Like, how many times can we talk about Hunter Biden? And it's like, okay, is the guy in prison? No? Okay, well then I don't care. They're gonna have more congressional hearings. Oh, great! What is that gonna do? The constant. The walls are closing in on Trump. It's like, are they? Okay, well, until like he's actually like in a prison cell, like where it's. Do we really give a shit? Like, I don't. Because nothing came of the raid on his compound at Mar-a-Lago, so who cares?
Right, and even now with all the now like with the revelation that guess what, Joe Biden is just as guilty, but no one like all of like the gymnastics that they're going through to make it to make this instance different than what happened with Trump.
Yeah,
it's just like it's simple. It's like yeah, it's like you have to just be like yep, they're right. It is different because at the time Biden was VP. He didn't have the executive privilege to just declassify whatever he wanted.
That's not a vice presidential power.
Yeah, it's not advice. Yeah, it's not an enumerated power to the vice president. So it's like yeah, leftist sold out media. You're right. It's not the same as Trump. Because Trump had every right to, take whatever, what documents he wanted and then, say that he declassified them, later.
Yeah,
and that's how you shut that down. It's just
exactly. But then people don't want to listen to that because they're like, it's like, and then they get all huffy and puffy and upset because they know that you're right.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it just, plus like all that stuff, even though it is quote unquote declassified, they're like, oh hey, why don't you put an extra like lock on this door, like kind of keep it more secure. Okay, cool, they did. And it's not like he's not guarded by fucking Secret Service already. And so who's getting into that compound stealing documents?
Right. And I mean, Mar-a-Lago was more secure than Joe Biden's fucking garage because like at least there's like a front desk and they keep like records of like who's come and gone and and there's like surveillance cameras and all that shit. But it's just like Joe Biden's like, oh yeah, it was like my garage is locked. It's just like it's like when is it's like so yeah. Let's not let to save the fact that that these were sensitive documents. It's just so stupid. I don't even have the words.
Yeah.
But yeah, just they're just like if it was anything else, like if let's say it was a nuke, and Joe Biden's having to take a nuke on his way out the White House with his time with Obama, and it's like. And he just haphazardly kept it in his garage. It's like, it's okay because the garage door was locked.
Yeah.
No one would tolerate that shit.
No.
No one should tolerate that shit.
Yeah, it's all dumb. I'm just at this point. I'm so like, it's like, oh, we got Joe Biden. It's like, no, you don't. Guess what's gonna happen? Nothing. Nothing's gonna happen from it.
Yeah, he's not gonna go to jail. He's not gonna be prosecuted. He's gonna be allowed to slink away and retire in dignity, quote unquote, and he won't be put up for the 2024 run. That's
Yeah,
it.
it's just that's what's gonna happen. That it's just at this point it's like everyone's so angry and up in arms and oh they're the real hypocrites blah blah blah. It's like yeah that narrative's it's tired, it's old. No one that's first of all the Democrats don't give a shit. They don't care. They know they're
They have
hypocrites.
no shame. The Democrats
They're,
have no shame.
they're
The
the
la-
real racists. They're
yeah,
the real transphobes. It's like
if anything, the last 6 years should have told you that they have no shame.
yeah, and I just it's like give me some like real like news like we do have people that have been doing good investigative journalism that have been exposing stories, and yet those people seem to be like being detained or whatever, or like kind of being shuffled off to the side and told they're crazy, when in reality they're telling the truth. And I think those people should be like those stories should probably be highlighted more and saying like
Yeah, and
what
I mean, yeah, like I know this is so bad, but I wasn't able to look into the matter myself. But like I heard from someone, someone I trust that there's something going on, like kind of like in Armenia right now, like some sort of attack or like some sort of military action, where people have died, and it's
well I mean hell I mean you have people that back in what it's like 100 years ago now, maybe less than that. At the like there was the Armenian genocide, and like there's people that still to this day deny that. And that well that because everyone kind of talks about like obviously like the Holocaust and all those things, and sure that's somewhat important. But like well, but like when you look at this like and then it's like oh yeah no that never happened, and it's like it's always the people that seem to be descended from the people that committed that said atrocity,
Mhm.
like a Chink Uger. It's like
Right, yeah. Just Google it. Anyways, just really quickly, just cursory investigation, but apparently it's Armenia and Azerbaijan.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the like in like some supposed link to like basically Russia told Azerbaijan to start shit with Armenia.
Oh, of course they did. I mean, it's like that whole God, that whole region is just and because Armenia is actually like a not a they're not like a terrible country, but like man, they've had so many bad things happen to them over the course of I mean centuries at this point.
Hmm.
But that whole region is just such a garbage heap. I'm so tired of hearing about Ukraine and Russia and all the um, just the saber rattling from both Putin and what's his face in Ukraine. I forget his name.
Zelensky.
Yeah,
Zelensky.
Zelensky. Oh, he was named
Yeah,
Times Man of the Year. Like, who gives a shit? Like, he's not. Oh,
yeah.
is
Stalin was Times Man of the Year.
so is
Hitler was Times Man of the Year. No, who gives a shit? All right,
But
dude.
you
Freaking
see that? Like,
Eggs in California are nearly $2 per.
did you did you see that really cringeworthy video that was put out by I don't know if it was like Joe Biden, the presidential Twitter or whatever, but like that stupid slow motion like camera walk of like him and Biden walking down like whatever like somewhere in the White House, like trying to like recreate some like Kill Bill scene, like oh man we're so cool, and it's just God it's so like just stop it, stop
No,
it.
but what you described sounds like visual aids.
I thought I wanted to wash my eyes out with some Clorox. It just it's the stupid it's the we're being gaslit like oh yeah we need to support Zelensky another $40 billion that's just gonna go to who yeah
Yeah, and for what? All right, I want a fucking receipt.
honestly though like at this point I would not be surprised if like the Russia Ukraine whole thing if this is not just another Snowpiercer like situation where it's like oh we have like this part of the train is going against this part of the train, but the both parts of the train are working together. You know, like the both heads of both ends of the train are actually like in cahoots.
Right.
I would not be surprised.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it, if everything got revealed and like since the dawn of time, that's how it worked.
Yeah. You know, because this is in everything that we talked about, like with like how when we talk about like World War I and how all that got started, all these we keep trying to create these stupid global treaties, like oh we need to make this person part of NATO and this is going to be part of NATO, and oh if this person does this, we're gonna send our troops over there, and it's like stop it, just
Yeah,
stop it.
right. Yeah, I mean, what is it? We were talking about it, and then I remember uh, was it one of my favorite thought leaders, Owen Benjamin. He was talking about how World War I was because of globalism and because of all
Not
like
it was
all the
global.
treaties, and then when I watched the Kingsman prequel, the King's Man, and it's just like
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
there it is. It's like yeah, there it is. Like Russia only got Germany got involved because Austria-Hungary, and then Russia got
North
involved
involved
because of
because of
Serbia.
Serbia.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guarantee, like the Black Hand that was involved in all of that, they're not part of Serbia. I mean, yeah, they lived in Serbia, but they lived all across Europe, and they were there to sow division
Mhm.
and create like
Right,
chaos.
and even in like the bad sense of like both sides working together, like a la Snowpiercer, like that was what the plan was with the bad guys in the Kingsman.
Yeah,
It's like he the guy he built up the right, and then he built up the left.
yeah,
Both sides. I
yeah.
wouldn't
I
be
mean, it's like, yeah,
surprised.
that's just a movie, but like it's not based on nothing.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, for those of you who haven't watched The King's Man, I mean, I'm not like this isn't like a recommendation, but it's a fun watch, and it's like and it satisfies my love of alternate history, and so just like the idea that like all the chaos and turmoil that was happening in the early 20th century, all being orchestrated by one man, one organization. Like it really satisfies that part
Well,
of
you
me.
also see because there were all these kind of mysterious guys that were involved with like these kind of these big nations. Like you have God, what the hell is the name that killed Franz Ferdinand? It was like
Princey.
Prinshep. Yeah, Prinshep or whatever the hell his name was.
Mm-hmm.
Then in like obviously in well at the time was Imperial Russia. You had Rasputin, who was kind of sowing this, kind of creating this like doing a lot of stuff with the royal family, which I mean they were already kind of sowing they themselves were kind of sowing division among the country, and like the country was kind of falling apart. Um, but yeah, like and then you also have like guys like was it Lenin, who had been he had been exiled, and he, I forget where he was exiled to, but there was a country that ended up releasing him and sending him over back into Russia, and which created the Red Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And it just it kind of just coincided with Russia getting their ass handed to them in World War I, where they lost. I mean, like the losses were astounding. It was several tens of
Yeah,
millions.
yeah, a meat grinder.
Yeah, and they lost so much money, so many people, and it was just it was just a matter of time. Like it created this tinderbox within their own country that changed the course of the world.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
like Russia, like still, like I mean, it still hasn't recovered from the era of the Soviet Union.
Right.
It's just kind of under kind of like slightly less worse, conditions, but it's kind of the same thing at the same time.
Hmm.
Yeah, it just I think that the more that we look back into history, it fascinates me more and more
Hmm.
how all this stuff plays out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, right. I'm not. Yeah. We're not making any claims, but we're it's just very interesting. Um,
Like I said, it's just it's just looking at like what's there, like what the the players that were in place based off of the evidence of like what we know they've said, the stuff that's been written down, stuff that how world events played out, who was involved. You can kind of like we can't know everything obviously, but we do know enough where you can start like kind of connecting the dots. It's like, wait, that seems kind of weird. That seems a little weird. And you have pretty much like where all the other allies of Germany fell into. I mean, they're gone. Like Austria-Hungary ceased to be an empire anymore. It also was at the Ottoman Empire ended after World War One as well.
mhm.
You had Russia, the Imperial Russia was gone. It ended up, I mean, several years later it became the Soviet Union. Didn't happen like in 1918, but like over the course of the next year or two, the Red Revolution happened and the imperial family was murdered.
Mhm.
You get Lenin kind of creating the Soviet Union. Uh, you have generations. I mean, whole villages were wiped out, like from everywhere, all across Europe. It was a worthless war, and yeah, it's just yeah, globalism. It doesn't do any good, and yet we're doing the same goddamn thing right
Yeah.
now. And we have all
Yeah.
these. We're gonna have all these like these because we have all these stupid global treaties with countries that are you know because America has defended the world for so long, they
Mhm.
don't actually have a military that can do anything, and they create all these treaties knowing that the United States will back us up. Oh, we're going to be part of this trade organization, the North Atlantic Trade Organization, and we're going to be part of this thing. And oh, if this country our enemies attack us, then these other countries will help protect us. And oh wait, no, and but if they do that, that means that these other countries are going to get involved, and then all of a sudden you have the whole world at war again because they have these stupid treaties that they shouldn't even have in the first place. Like I said, I don't mind like working with other countries when it benefits us, where like maybe or even if there's like a mutual benefit, but like we have to get out of these dumb treaties. Like who I want the United Nations to be raised. It should be demolished and brought to the ground and the earth salted underneath it.
Or
I don't
first
give it.
burn to the ground and then the salty earth so nothing can grow back.
Yeah, the United Nations is garbage. It's Woodrow Wilson tried tried to start the League of Nations. That was a fucking disaster. That ended up and Congress at the time was smart enough. It's like, yeah, no, we're not gonna be doing any of this crap, and they were right to do that.
Right.
And
What
then
was it? There
also,
was a yeah. The just to demonstrate how feckless the United Nations is. Um, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry I can't really. I don't have specifics, but there was some sort of vote that the United Nations was gonna hold to stop something, and it literally only took one opposition vote to stop them. It was like a good thing too.
oh god, what? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
and then there
I'm
was
sorry that I can't like provide specifics, but but not I should I didn't know exactly we were gonna go into this. If I knew, I would have better prepared. But yeah, it was like it was something big. Like they were like voting on some but oh, that's the reason I was reminded because it was Russia who threw the opposing vote, which like kiboshed the whole thing.
of course they did.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, but like, why am I listening? Why am I listening to these other countries? Like, who who cares? Go away.
Yeah,
The
I
fact is,
mean,
like, the budget of the United Nations, like, over half of it comes from our country.
yeah,
They
no,
don't. They don't.
exactly. Yeah, like during like the era of Trump, Trump called out all of the other member nations of NATO, and like after decades of them not putting into the common defense, they're like, hey, motherfuckers, we're the ones footing the bill here. So you either pay your fair share or you shut the fuck up.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, and Canada, they should be giving Canada and Mexico should be giving us tribute every single year because they can
Canada
they
doesn't
can they can say whatever the fuck they want and start shit with anybody, and they know that America is gonna back them up because do you think America is gonna allow some foreign country to roll their tanks and their personnel through our country to get into Canada? Fuck no.
Yeah. Canada exists at this point only because we exist,
Right.
and the fact that honestly we should have conquered that territory in 1812, we didn't do it.
I know.
Uh, it ended up becoming a stalemate with the British, and it should have come to a point where it's like, yeah, you know what, we're just gonna take that territory back. It's like after we got stronger,
Hmm.
it's like,
Yeah,
but
pull the reverse 1812.
yeah, oh god, but yeah, like the United Nations shouldn't exist. I mean, the League of
Right, like
Nations,
the whole
first
yeah,
of all,
the whole
so
well like the United Nations uh per its what is it like mandate was to kind of keep tensions down between then the Soviet Union and the United States. That's gone. The Soviet Union no longer exists. Like Russia, as it currently is constituted, is not a threat to us at all.
like most government organizations, it's outlived its usefulness.
Exactly. So there's literally no reason for the United Nations anymore.
Yeah.
Under the previous mandate of that organization. Like there literally is no point to it anymore.
What was it like? Because the ancestor of the United Nations was the League of Nations. That
Mm-hmm.
was
Yeah,
formed,
the progenitor.
yeah, right at the end of World War One.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they created the Treaty of Versailles, which really essentially, and they knew it. After that treaty was signed, they knew that this was going to cause another world war.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a matter of time because they fucked Germany. It's and Germany really was only like kind of following the treaties that they had signed. Like it was, because but they were the only country left of those countries essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So everything got blamed on them, and they got massacred essentially. And there's like, and people at the time was like, yeah, this is gonna cause it. This is just a another war in the waiting. Um, you have, and I think there was I think Congress voted down that, like, the U.S. would end up officially joining the League of Nations. I think they turned it down, and it was a Woodrow Wilson, I think, got so mad over that Congress wouldn't allow the U.S. to do that. That he ended up having a stroke, and then his wife ran the country for the rest of his presidency.
Right.
Um, I mean, not much, pretty much like what we have now, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Just, but yeah, and then I don't know when did the current iteration of the United Nations start? What was this, after World War II?
Yeah, it's after World War II. I forget like how many years afterward, but yeah, definitely after World War II.
Well, it
Because
was at least
again, like the whole purpose was to manage tensions between the U.S. and the Soviet Union.
well, it was at least around 1958 because that was a huge part of the story in North by Northwest.
Mm. Oh yeah, that's right.
So that was 1958. So it's at least 10 years after, 13 years after World War II. So
Mm-hmm.
probably sometime after World War II that the United Nations was put together, and I think by then, Congress was stuffed enough where it's like, okay, yeah, we'll join.
Mm.
But it's just
Yeah,
like,
I mean, yeah, we bring this up, it kind of, this is a little bit of an appetizer to, what we're gonna be talking about. Pretty much, almost the rest of the live stream today. And if you didn't know by the title, um, we're gonna be discussing Lincoln, and not Lincoln as the great emancipator, but Lincoln as an American dictator, possibly.
yeah. Now
If the evidence that we've come across is accurate and true, then all indicators point to yes.
because well, we're commenting on a video that Andy came across, and a lot of the points that were brought up, were very well sourced. So
Mm-hmm.
it's there. It can be easily looked at. Like, okay, where and he lists all his sources at the end. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of like firsthand sources based off of like the local papers that were involved that were critical of Lincoln. A lot of like the words of the people uh, that were under Lincoln, Lincoln's own words, kind of like this. And it's not just like cherry picked. Like these are actual
Right.
statements of like these people over the course of their time as elected officials.
Right. And yeah. Okay. Just back up. Yeah. This video is by this video essay is by a creator named Razorfist. And if you're familiar with his work, he does a good job. He does like these kind of like rants, but they're like but they're really like well sourced. I
They're
mean,
well thought out and they're well
yeah,
sourced.
they're
It's
well
not
thought
just
out, well
like
sourced,
crazy
and
man
very well
on
performed as
camera.
well. Very very well performed. And so yeah, and then like I loved one of the things he said was talking about cherry picking quotes is that you would have kind of dispelling the myth of Lincoln's like you'd have to cherry pick quotes to tell that he wasn't all these things.
Yeah.
And
How
so
did you, well, first of all, how did you come to this video, and like what kind of, were you like looking for it? Did you hear about it? Did it just kind of come across like your purview somehow?
right, well, I follow Razorfist
Oh,
on my
okay.
yeah on my personal channel, so I'm subscribed to him.
Okay.
And so yeah, so whenever he puts out content, I'm notified of it, and this one came up, and and initially I thought it was a video essay or rant as he's more commonly to do, in defense of Lincoln. But then I looked at the thumbnail, and then I read the title and just like what. And so it got me curious, and so I clicked on it, and I watched the entire thing, and I was just like gobsmacked. Because it's not as though like these are things that I've heard about. Like this, I wasn't hearing about these things for the first time from Razorfist. These are things that I myself have found out or learned about through my own kind of you know uh, leisurely studies.
Well, hell, I mean, the thing is, here's the thing though. Some of the stuff that he brought up, we've actually talked about,
Mm-hmm.
that even before he did this video. And now it wasn't necessarily targeted at Lincoln, but we've talked about how, it wasn't because over the course of several movies that we've watched, several things that parts of history that we've looked at, and I've said it's like the when it comes to the Civil War, because it's such a muddied part of history. Just like everything else that was going on in the world at that time, you have Japan was like going through a huge change. A lot of Europe,
The
like
Meiji period, yeah.
1848 in Europe, was a huge changing period of for a lot of countries. Certain empires were ending, certain new countries were being formed. A lot of things were being changed around the world,
Right.
and America included. And a lot of people is like, oh well, it's like it was this. Uh, Everyone talks about, oh, it's because of slavery. It's because of slavery. It's like, well, that actually no, it wasn't. Because like obviously at this point, all of the founding fathers are dead, and even like the
Yeah,
the
or
people
maybe like
that
even some of like the early declaration signers. They're like they're old and feeble, but yeah, but
yeah
most of like
they're
the founding fathers are gone. Maybe one or two of the guys
the
who signed
disciples are
the
too.
Declaration of Independence are hanging on, but
Yeah, well, the disciples of the founding fathers are also dead at this point too,
right,
for the most part.
for the most part.
So this time period of the country is like a huge testing period in a lot of ways, and this is where we have parties being formed and like kind of like where I want to say it was like Millard Fillmore,
Hmm.
which when the hell was he president? It was 1850, I believe. I could be wrong
Right,
on
right.
that.
I think that sounds about right. I definitely before Civil War.
Yeah, it was well before the Civil War, but he's kind of like this kind of forgotten president. Nobody really knows a whole lot of information about Millard Fillmore,
Hmm.
except for the fact that I think he was the one that like really kind of got us into like what we know as the two-party system today.
Hmm.
As far as like now we have, well, at the time it was the Whig Party and the Democrats,
Hmm.
and that's kind of like and kind of creating these political parties.
Right,
Um, say what you will about that. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing or what.
right.
But
I
he
mean, I
did
think
that.
generally speaking, I think you know. I, I think the founders wanted people. I don't. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the founders didn't want political parties because
No,
because parties tend lead to was it polarization or basically like teams. Um, I think just parties in general, but I think they were looking for more of like kind of like kind of building coalitions, um, and
yeah,
so like individuals who then like coalesce around like certain ideas, but only for uh, for certain periods, not groups, organizations.
yeah. But like when my point was like when we were talking about this time here is like listen, the North was not necessarily was not necessarily good.
Hmm.
I mean, they had a lot of problems, and the South wasn't necessarily always bad. In fact, like there was actually slave owners were very rare down there because it
Right? Yeah. I
cost
mean, exactly. Because if you think
you know,
about like what it takes to care for and sustain a human being, it's like that costs a
the
lot of money. It's like
the
you're
wealthy elite.
the tenant farmer is not having doesn't have a slave.
Yeah, the wealthy aristocrats of the South were the ones that owned the plantations and the slaves
Mm-hmm.
because it was very expensive. Well, I mean, hell, like we after we did our Birth of a Nation review, we found like the recordings of Confederate soldiers, of former slaves, and listened to their words of like talking about their experiences. And the Confederate soldier that we listened to so far, I think that's the only one that is available. I
Right.
don't know if there are more.
Yeah, and he was the most famous one.
Right, he was the most famous one. He didn't own slaves. In fact, like when he was talking about like, well, what did you fight for? It's like it had nothing to do with preserving slavery.
Right. Yeah, he even said like his daddy taught him not to denigrate anybody, on the basis of skin color.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
like and this is that's crazy to think about. It's like I heard that. It's like what? Yeah,
I
that
know.
you're
It's like
not
yeah, it's
gonna
like my daddy taught me not to. Yeah,
you ain't gonna hear that in a textbook or in you're not gonna hear that in
yeah. You're not
school.
gonna read that in any like state like approved textbooks.
God, and I really wish I could. I don't know. So back in the day, because my family and I, we used to like every weekend we used to watch like a movie of some sort. Like we,
Mm-hmm.
you go to Blockbuster, you rent some stuff, and I
Right.
remember we ended up watching. I want to say it was like Gods and Generals or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if it was on. It was when we rented that. It was part of that tape, but there was some sort of or if it was something that my dad came across. But there was some documentary there kind of talking about like the history of the South and well, I mean the history of the Civil War, but like showing how like a lot of the Civil War was tough on a lot of people because it pitted families once against each other
Right.
and or communities against each other, and it was kind of talking about how like kind of like what I've always talked about, how like the North was not necessarily like like the they weren't necessarily the good guys. Like there was a lot of problems there, and the South wasn't necessarily the bad guys. It was just kind of like a really terrible time that everyone went through
Hmm.
because and honestly like I've always thought that like the South actually had a lot of interesting reasons why that they, because secession was already happening well before uh Lincoln came into power. Like a
Right.
lot
And
of
yeah,
the
even
it
yeah, and even Razorfist video talks about that. How I think
had nothing to do with slavery either.
yeah. What was it? And I think it was like what state? It was a northern state, like Maine. I think it was like one of the
New England had been trying. They tried to
yeah
secede back in. Well, it was the New England had tried to secede back in. Maybe like in the right around like the after the like the War of 1812. Like they. So it's because in the Constitution, it does allow for like, hey, if you're because each of the states are their own country. We just happen to unite as like a whole bunch of countries together.
hmm
And so that's why like back in those times, like you weren't an American, you were not from the United States, you were not an American, you were a Virginian, you
right
were a
yeah
Floridian, you were not like you were a that
right
was
yeah
your
you're
country, that was your people.
hmm
It's only within the last hundred
some odd
maybe going on,
years
yeah, 100 and some odd years, um that we're Americans,
right
that's
yeah
but that's not
we're
really what
not
we are.
Californians, we're not Arizonans, we're not
Yeah, exactly. Um,
Nebraskans.
but this had been like going on well before Lincoln came into the presidency, but it just
Right, yeah, secession wasn't this like this new idea, and
no,
even like yeah, and even now like with like
because
Texas,
they thought that the
flirting with the
federal government,
idea and
because there were things that were happening had nothing to do with slavery for once, by the way. It
Mhm.
was just like they felt that the federal government was not living up to like what the contract was, which is in the Constitution, and
Right.
because of that, they felt like, okay, they've overstepped their bounds, and we are going to talk about seceding. And actually, another what's also fascinating that came up in this video is that it was not just the southern states. Maryland wanted to secede from the Union as well.
Hmm.
And the only reason that that stopped is because Lincoln ended up, according to Razor Fist and like the research he did, is that Lincoln ended up essentially jailing the entire state state Congress that had even been debating secession.
Yeah, so
So it wasn't
right,
just
so it
southern
wasn't
states
just slavery.
to
It's
secede.
like
There was
yeah,
northern.
people were starting to connect the dots. We talk about we think like now is like the greatest time in like red pilling. I think back then they were seeing stuff that that I think that the red I think the red pilling phenomenon is I think generational. You know, and it happens at certain times. I think after a certain amount of time passes, people begin to kind of slack on their diligence, and and what is it? Uh, little tiny influences start to creep into the government and kind of take hold. And so yeah, I think the New Englanders and Maryland, I think they were seeing something that just wasn't adding up, or that they they were trying to call out.
Well, I mean, everyone knew that something was wrong because, well, and but here's the thing: is that all these like because back then there was some actual journalism. It wasn't what we have today, which is all
Right.
like state run. Honestly, everything, all the mainstream stuff seems like it's state run. Like it just doesn't. It's all kind of BS. Like you really can't trust it anymore.
Right.
And that's been at least for 100 years, maybe a little bit more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and maybe it probably goes back to this time period where because before, like, yeah, sure, newspaper had bias, but they were pretty honest about their bias, and they just wanted to provide, like, kind of the news, their local news. So you have all these like local newspapers, like, wait a second, Lincoln's doing this, and he's saying this, and they're printing that stuff because that's news. And they are
Right.
obviously they are also commentating on like what they're hearing. It's like, well, this doesn't seem like this is constitutional. This doesn't seem like this is like what we do in this country. And instead of just like doing nothing like a normal person would do, he essentially shut down the production to those newspapers, canceled them essentially, and a lot of those newspapers went out of business. Like he used like because the way that news was provided in those days, how communication traveled was through newspaper and through the telegraph. And people who were critical of his administration, he would shut them down. Like it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, this newspaper, he would use the U.S. mail to stop the distribution of these newspapers,
That's right.
and uh, I don't know how he did it with the telegraph, but like yeah, essentially like that's like shutting down your phone line when you're critical of Joe Biden. It's like
Right.
that's like Joe Biden
Yeah.
saying like, oh well, sorry Verizon or AT&T or whoever you have,
Yeah. Or
but we're
Pac
gonna
Bell.
yeah, it's like, well, I don't like what this person's saying about me, so we're gonna shut down their phone service.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that
and just goes to show you, like nothing's new under the sun. Like this, we talk about like the government interference with like Twitter and uh, big tech and all that stuff. It's not new. Like the backdoor portals or whatever. It's like that's not new. All
yeah.
right, government's
Back
been
then,
doing this.
and that's like, and this is and I'll just say like I can't confirm what he said, but man, it was pretty well sourced. I'm just saying like I'm like that is a hefty claim that he does back up. I'll just say that it's like when I saw that I was like, whoa, what the hell? That's nuts.
Right, exactly. And I mean, me and Robert both we understood like that period in American history. You know, a lot of stuff was going on, and you know, uh, we understand that not, we weren't exactly told, we weren't given the whole story, but but there was enough there to like keep us, kind of like keep us open minded to like the stuff that this video, presented. And I mean, I'm just speaking for myself, but there's enough. There was like, I think there was enough truth in it to like where it like really resonated within me. Where it's like, dude, this could be the truth. This could be the true history of our country.
Yeah, and it makes like so obviously we review a lot of movies here. I go back to Gone with the Wind and Birth of a Nation, and there's certain excerpts of those movies that obviously people are very critical of. But then when you like hear stuff like this, it's like maybe like what was being said here or what was being shown wasn't wrong. It's like it was more of like showing what actually did happen, and maybe like like I said, I'm not, when it comes to Birth of a Nation, it's like, yeah, no one wants slavery anymore. Like, oh, it's, or, some of the message there is a little, obviously very off. But there
Mm-hmm.
are certain things that, like, we saw there is, like, a lot of the, I think it did show the certain excerpts of, like, Sherman's troops that were, like,
Right.
raping
Oh
and
yeah. Yeah.
whole
And I mean,
towns.
and yeah, and Gone with the Wind, they showed the
Well,
burning of Atlanta.
Glory talks about this too. Glory, that happened in Glory.
Yeah.
Yeah, they showed that too.
Yeah.
Which so it's like this guy and his troops. I mean, like they're northern troops, and they would go and just like destroy the shit out of these like towns.
Mhm.
I mean, and they would burn people in fucking like church buildings. They would like lock them up in there, and if or if like
I think you might be confusing that with the Patriot.
no, I thought there was a scene in Glory where that happened too.
No,
Is
well, I
it
mean, yeah, they sack a town. Yeah, but they don't like lock people in buildings and set.
was that the
And
Patriot? Am I
yeah,
mixing
that
that?
was the Patriot. Yeah,
Oh shit. Okay, well never mind.
yeah. But
Scratch
yeah,
that.
you're right. Yeah, like there was that scene where you know, the other colonel with the black, all black regiment, they're going out on patrol or whatever, and like and Matthew Broderick's character, he's like is invited. He's like really excited. He's like, oh, we're gonna see some action, but then all that happened is they loot a village and burn it to the ground. Basically, hiding their war crimes essentially.
God, yeah. It's. I mean, and they would use like if the Southern women didn't like go with like what was being done, they'd be used as prostitutes.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
was a
Well,
that was,
according to the Razorfist video, yes.
well no that was from I think that was from an excerpt from the Sherman memoirs.
Right, 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 right. But like we're not okay because we're kind of talking. We're talking a little like a mile a minute here. So we're not saying like this was a scene in the movie, the
No, no,
Glory or
no.
whatever. Yeah, we're talking like we're referencing back to
So sorry, I'm
the
referencing
Razorfist video,
the
and yeah,
video.
like from Sherman's own memoirs, he was talking about like yeah, that's kind of like the Nanking thing, like where 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 the Japanese used rape as a weapon of war. Sherman was doing
Yeah.
it like at least
Where do you think they learned it?
80 years before.
Where do you think they learned it from?
There you go.
Well, because like once again, this same time period that the Civil War was happening, I think it was like right after the Civil War. That's like when the Meiji era came into being. That's where like Japan was becoming more westernized,
Mhm.
and yeah, there was essentially a whole civil war in Japan, like
Oh yeah, like
with
in
like
like the
the
movie The Last Samurai, kind of
yeah
fictionalizes, but
well, that's and Sword of Doom talks about that too, because our main character, as evil as he is,
mhm.
he's part of like the Tokugawa shogunate soldiers that are trying to stem the tide of the Western expansion into Japan,
Mhm.
and that's also a very fascinating time period. But they're being taught by these Union soldiers who probably were part of Sherman's march and did this, and they're teaching them the same thing. Where do you think that they learned it from?
Right. I mean, yeah, and even in like the fictional take in Last Samurai, what was it? You know, the Tom Cruise's character, and then like the colonel that was from his regiment. They were both part of the Seventh Army.
Mhm.
That was Custer.
Exactly. Oh man, it's just it's crazy like how like all these like little you start to connect those dots and like how yeah it just because that's like when the Meiji era is like that's really when Japan kind of started like its march into like imperialism
Imperialism. Mm.
and a movie that we're gonna do at some point is The Human Condition, which is kind of like that's them at the height, like during like World War II and like a lot of the atrocities that were committing over in like Manchuria and and yeah, it's really intense, like what went on during that period. And we've also talked too about how Japan kind of it almost seems like they get a pass in a lot of ways in that time period. Um,
Right. Because I don't know why, but like yeah, because like we dropped the bomb on them, like
well, I think
they're
that's what the theorizing that we were doing is like, why is it that Germany? I mean, of all the Axis powers, who and no one really is super upset at like Mussolini. I mean, other than the Italians who hate Mussolini. But like, yeah, no, we're not like we don't have this hatred for the Italians or the Japanese that we do
yeah
for
like the visceral hatred for them.
and we were theorizing like, well, the Italians, I have no idea why. Maybe because they kind of sucked, but like the 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 Japanese, in my opinion, were way worse. I think they did a lot worse things to people.
Mm.
Sure, you had like the concentration camps over in Germany, which was not just the Jews. There was a lot of other people like political
Right.
dissidents, Christians, and
Yeah, Romani, like gypsies,
yeah, it's
other
like
other ethnic minorities.
people who are disabled.
Hmm.
They were thrown in there too. So
Right, or like
there,
descending priests. You know,
yeah,
what is it? Yeah, I remember. Yeah, like the story. Um, there was this. The German army came and like they rounded up like this Jewish ghetto. But this one priest, they're rounding everybody, right? And this priest just happens to be in that ghetto, and so the priest gets rounded up. But the priest is like pretty well known, and so one of the soldiers recognizes him and says, "It's like, hey, you get out of the line. So I know who you are. You don't belong with them." But the priest, said like, "No, no, I'm gonna stay." And he goes off to his death with the Jews and stuff.
Jesus,
So
that's uh, that's nuts.
yeah. But yeah, it's I think it's because we dropped the bomb on Japan and like turn their one of their two of their cities into like smoldering craters or whatever, and so they get the sympathy, but like no, like because if we had dropped the bomb on Berlin, I'm sure that the Germans would have gotten a pass.
Yeah, I think so. I really think that that's the reason. It's like, how dare we use our American power and privilege against this, defenseless nation? It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like the Japanese were, in my opinion, I think they did a lot worse things. Like
Yeah,
some of the human experimentation that they did,
mm,
and like you said, using rape as like
it's a
as a
weapon of
weapon.
war.
Good. I mean, like what they did to Korea and China is
Yeah, I
horrible.
mean, one of my uncles, yeah, I mean, as a practical matter, he still does, but like, yeah, because when he lost his car, his son my cousin gave him one of his pickup trucks, and it was a Toyota, and it's like, yeah, I hate the Japanese,
Yeah, I don't, I don't,
and so,
I don't blame him.
but I mean, as a because he's a practical man, he did drive that car, but he hated it.
Yeah, it's and also arguably too, like because of like how Japan had been, because they actually were very smart in how they expanded because they did it very slowly. It was over
Right.
a long period of time because this started like right at the end of like World War I, where they realized that they were not strong enough, and so but they were strong enough to like maybe like take like little bits and kind of like chew small pieces,
Mm-hmm.
and over that time, as they took more resources, oh, now we're stronger, now we're better, and that they ended up starting to take like they took over like the Philippines, they
Yeah.
took over large swaths of China. They
Manchuria.
yeah, well at the time yeah it was Manchuria, and then they took over the majority of Korea, I believe too. So
Yeah.
and but because of as when they were brought to heel, that also similar to like with how like Russia, what happened with Russia at the end of World War I, is it brought in communism because that's when now Manchuria itself was already kind of in civil unrest. If you look at like movies like The Sand Pebbles, they kind of deal with that scenario where there's like a lot of the Boxer rebellions and
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like when Mao came to power over in China and ended up becoming the communist China, and then that's where we get like because right after World War II, boom, we're in Korea, like in the Korean War,
Mm-hmm.
because you have Kim Il Sung who is starting to try to kind of bring communism throughout Korea, and it just created this whole fucking mess. And I was listening to an interview from some Korean veterans talking about what they dealt with, and like there was so much interference in that war
Mm-hmm.
that like there should have been no problem defeating everything because they had actually brought it like they had taken parts of North Korea. They were actually advancing,
Mm,
and then because of a lot of kind of similar to Vietnam, a lot of political interference and a lot of other problems, they ended up having to retreat all the way back to where they even started at the 38th parallel. It's like, okay, well, it's like stalemate. It's like, really? It's and
right.
how much
But
damage
yeah, but
how
you
much
know,
damage has that done?
exactly in terms of lives, people, living in the north and basically being starved to death. Um,
You
but
literally had families.
then you get to another, yeah, then you get to a certain point where it's like you start thinking, it's like was this their intention the entire time to have, kind of like this experiment where like they have two different states, you know, one, north is communist and the south is, republic, democratic republic, and see which one is better. But then they still, but they kind of forgot about the experiment, and so now like, Korea is carved up, and there's at least in my lifetime, I don't see a chance of reunification.
Oh, there's no way in hell that's ever going to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, unless like one of the one of the generals in North Korea, makes a deal with the West or whatever. But
The only way that this
even then, it's like I'm pretty sure that general is going to renege and then just make himself dictator over North Korea.
here's the way that that ends up getting fixed. China has to fail, like as far as like it collapses under its own.
Oh, mm-hmm. Yeah,
It
because China is the only backer of North Korea.
it's because they're the largest. I mean, they're not like exactly communist, but they're communist.
Yeah.
Let's just be fair.
Mm-hmm.
They have to implode, which they probably should at some point because they don't have any sort of. Why do you think that they've been buying up they've been buying up debts, they've been buying up a lot of like natural resources in like all these
Other
countries.
countries, yeah, yeah,
That's the only thing that's
yeah,
keeping
yeah.
them
In
afloat.
Africa, the Middle East, parts of South America, and and in America, North
Yeah,
America.
yeah,
You
that's
know.
what's keeping them afloat.
Mm.
But eventually, like, there's gonna come a point where they will collapse.
Right.
I
Yeah. I
don't
mean,
know.
they're essentially doing colonies without the whole like colonial like force basically. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's what they're doing. They're colonizing. Just they're doing economic colonialism.
Um, so that would have to change. They have to implode in on themselves,
Hmm.
and then North Korea no longer has a backer. And at
Well, I
that,
mean, okay, we're going off in a little bit of a rabbit trail, but I want to ask you then, if America didn't intervene in China and try to get them hooked on capitalism, do you think they would have imploded and then North Korea would have been taken over?
yeah, oh yeah, Nixon,
Back then, like let's say like
yeah,
it happens in the 80s.
yeah, had Nixon never, made, tried to like open up China, like I mean, that's been such a huge freaking disaster. Every time, like every politician that's ever done that, it's made things a lot worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like China doesn't care about like what they haven't had a generation that's known some sort of freedom in over 100 years,
Mm-hmm.
if and even back then, like even more of like the um like kind of like ancient China, like it's not they didn't necessarily have freedom there either. It's just not something that's in them. They were definitely more inventive and smarter, I think, but like because now a lot of the that country is they don't know how to create their own stuff. They steal, they
Right.
copy.
They don't. Yeah. They don't innovate. Well, no, that's not true. They don't invent. That's it. They don't
Yeah,
invent. They copy, they augment, but they don't conjure things up from like their own imaginations.
yeah. But so Nixon doing, kind of like, kind of buddying up to China and opening them up was a huge disaster. That's to me, that's the worst. the worst thing that Nixon ever did,
Mm.
because they were dead in the water.
Yeah, they're yeah. I mean, if not on like their last legs, and yeah, they all they had to do was stand back and wait for them to to die essentially.
And I think if had that happened, I don't know. Well, see, here's the other thing too, is because at that time the Soviet Union was still around too,
Mm-hmm.
and that was another kind of like supporter of like North Korea,
Mm.
because a lot of those Korean veterans talked about how like, yeah, we saw Russian planes, like there's no doubt about it, like we know what the Russian planes look like,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, they were there, even though they weren't technically involved in that war, but
Right.
they
Yeah,
were.
it's a proxy war.
Yeah,
I mean, at least for I think it was supposed to be a proxy war for the United States, but then they just, they say, oh, we just kicked the ass of the Nazis. What's we could beat anybody.
yeah,
So
but
I
I
think
think
that's what. But then I think the Soviets, they were totally proxy warring this.
Yeah, but I think what would happen, like let's say they didn't open up China. You have China collapsing probably in the 80s. Like communism fails in the 80s in
In
China.
China.
In the 90s, the Reagan helps end communism over in the Soviet Union,
Mm.
and that leaves, what is North Korea gonna do? And at that point, it's like, why don't we just like free those people? We end that regime and just let it be Korea, unified Korea once again.
Mm-hmm.
That would have, I think that could have happened. And so you're looking at like possibly like the 90s, maybe like 2000. In the 2000s, Korea is unified again.
Mm.
Um, but the way it is now, like it's not going to be in our lifetime.
No.
I'd be shocked if it
Yeah.
happens in our lifetime.
But anyway, yeah, yeah, bit of a rabbit trail. But yeah, but everything we just talked about kind of goes back to the time of the Civil War, or it can be connected to the time of the Civil War because all this destabilization and centralization of power, you know if if accurate, all started with Lincoln.
Yeah, the middle of the 19th century is one of the most influential time periods in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So much stuff was happening around the world at that
Right.
time,
Yeah. I
and
mean, so
it's
yeah, all these because what is it? Marx, was around that time, and even I think again, what haven't able to substantiate, but supposedly Marx and Lincoln were corresponding with each other.
get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
That would be, if there's evidence of that, that
Mm-hmm.
is wild,
Seriously.
dude.
So.
That to me would, like, if it was like a positive correspondence,
Mm-hmm.
that would be like, okay, yep, this guy is fucking
Yeah,
evil.
Lincoln. Yeah, Lincoln was infiltrated, or he inspired Karl Marx.
Who knows?
Shit. Yeah,
Um,
but yeah, just but
we already
all this
know that,
new
like,
information, just told because you've seen the Lincoln biopic, right? With what's his face?
Daniel Day Lewis.
Yeah, Daniel Day Lewis.
We reviewed it.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. But yeah, just seeing that movie now with the information from this uh video essay, particularly of the claim that Lincoln was so paranoid and micromanaging that he would basically live in the telegraph office. That scene where he's in the telegraph office waiting to hear back from the news from the front. It's completely different for me now.
Yeah, it's like,
Before
well,
it was him, just he's oh, he just wants to be there when the information comes, and he wants to be
well,
able to respond right away, and him regaling the soldiers with anecdotes or whatever. That's
yeah,
all gone for me now. He's
yeah, he was a notorious micromanager,
mm-hmm.
which is the reason why like the war was so like he was fucking up that war big time,
Right. Yeah,
because
that's why I was so protracted.
he wouldn't let he just wouldn't let the people do their fucking job.
Mhm.
And it's like, and but yeah, you're right. Like if all this information is true, which I'm starting to think it is, the reason why he's in the telegraph office, like, oh, who's talking shit about me? Who's like, what's going on?
Mhm.
How can I manipulate this? How can I stuff this information somewhere? That's why
Mhm.
he's there.
Exactly.
It's not that he's paranoid. I mean, yeah, maybe he's paranoid, but it's not paranoid because for good reasons.
Right. Yeah. He's not. Yeah. He's not there out of concern or like wanting to be able to respond back to his generals like quickly or whatever. It's like this motherfucker doesn't like he just doesn't trust anybody.
Yeah. I mean, it's just you look at like he can Razor Fist compared, like who do you think of like when you think of that? Woodrow Wilson. Who do you
Mm-hmm.
think of when you look at like today? You look at like someone like, well, I mean, Joe Biden's not running anything other than his
Right.
like
But his
diaper,
handlers, but
but
Joe
his
Biden's
handlers,
handlers.
yeah, his um God, I mean, it's like you can name like any number of politicians today, but like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you look back in history, like Woodrow Wilson was the same thing. Barack Obama is another one.
Mm-hmm.
Just another, just uh, I mean, I don't think he did it to the extent that Lincoln did. Geez, he imprisoned people, who,
Well, I mean, it's pretty close. He was prosecuting reporters, like the
yeah, oh,
whole what is
he
it?
was setting
The AP
yeah,
scandal of like
yeah, he was setting the IRS out.
surveilling AP reporters.
Yeah, he sent the IRS after his political detractors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he
Uh,
weaponized the IRS.
yeah. Hey, guess what? It's happening again.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, what was
And
it?
we're gonna learn.
Lincoln exiled one of his cabinet members, I believe. At least in the claims in the video essay.
Also created a huge fucking like government program, the FDA,
Hmm. Wait,
which
was that Lincoln?
yeah, that was it. Yeah, that was Lincoln. After his son died of like bad
Oh.
water that was going through like the White House, he created the FDA.
Oh. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, Todd Lincoln.
Or at
Was it?
least no, it wasn't yeah, it was Todd. It was Robert Todd Lincoln lived. He actually was he was there I think he was there with his dad when he was shot, and he was there when McKinley was shot. It's like, how unlucky do you have to be, dude? Like you were there at two presidential
Those
assassinations, your
assassinations, yeah.
dad, and one
You're bad luck, dude.
was the I think he was like the Secretary of State, or like he was part of the cabinet for McKinley, and he watched him get shot too. It's like, fuck,
Oh my
you have to
gosh.
be the most unlucky person.
Mm-hmm.
That's like all the Kennedy. That's like with all the Kennedys getting shot. It's like, damn, dude. Like, what did your family do? Like,
I know. Yeah. Was this like the sins of the father? Like, was it? Who's the
possibly.
who's the Kennedy patriarch?
Oh, that was Joseph P. Kennedy.
Joseph. That's right, Joseph P. Kennedy.
Yeah. God,
Yeah.
he
I
was
mean,
a
yeah.
he
Look
was
at that.
a
Yeah. Look at how that fool ended up. He like, well, what did he have again? It wasn't Alzheimer's. It was some sort of wasting disease.
Yeah, he ended up he wasn't able to walk at the end of his life, but he
Right.
watched I think all three of his four sons die.
Yeah.
And
That's right. Yeah.
one of his daughters was institutionalized her entire life.
Right.
Um and yeah, I think that it's like what a disaster of a family.
Yeah.
Well, Joseph P. Kennedy was also because he was pro. I think he had something I forget like what his controversy was because he was really high politically. Like I don't know if he was part of a cabinet, but he was definitely had the ear of the president.
Right.
For
Yeah. But Joseph Kennedy, he was a bootlegger. That's how he made his money.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that he because he was
Yeah, and then he started,
he
and
was
then
a Nazi
he,
sympathizer, and
yeah,
so
he was him and Prescott Bush, George Bush Senior's dad.
yeah,
He Prescott Bush, along with I think J.P. Morgan, bankrolled the Nazi Party.
I know there's a lot of stuff with Prescott Bush that is like really shady,
Yeah,
and it's whoa, it's really fucked up.
it's really fucking bad.
And it's like when I first like started hearing about it, it's like there's no way. And then it's like, oh wait a second, there's actually some like good sources here. It's like, oh Jesus Christ, this guy is
Yeah, I
involved with
mean,
some
fuck,
real.
dude. What is it? The Bushes are linked to Osama bin Laden.
That's why, well, because of like guys like Prescott Bush, that's why we have movies like The Skulls, like shit like that exists.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, which we reviewed. Yeah, like the skull, like
Yes.
yeah, Skulls is based the movie. That organization is based off Skull and Bones, which is out of Yale, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is so happen. George Bush. G, W went to Yale.
Yep.
If you could believe it.
Fool me once.
Yeah, that's the teachery.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know if it feels like we're wrapping things up here on this particular subject, but uh, anything else that you wanted to like touch on? Anything
The
that
other
stood out to you, like particularly that we didn't cover?
when with the Razor Fist video, the other thing that uh, one thing that actually really stood out to me too, I think we did kind of touch on this a little bit, was how the language change of how we refer to ourselves after the Civil War. You know how uh, essentially like I think states' rights really ended then. You know, after the end of the Civil War,
Mm-hmm.
the because if you look at all the correspondence of soldiers, no one referred to themselves as, "Oh, I live in the United States of America." You know, it's like they didn't look at themselves as Americans.
Right,
We see ourselves as Virginians,
right. I
New
mean, yeah,
Yorkers.
right. New Yorkers, Pennsylvanians,
Yeah,
Delawareans.
I don't know how all those work, but
Yeah,
anyways,
yeah.
like
Right,
it,
yeah, but you first said like, oh, it's like, oh, when someone said, like, oh, where you from? You didn't go, oh, I'm from America. They would say like, oh, I'm from Nebraska, or I'm from Kansas, or I'm
yeah,
from
like
New York.
when Robert E. Lee says like I didn't want to take up arms against my countrymen, he's talking about
Right.
his fellow Virginians.
There you go. I was just about to bring that
He
up,
was
but
tapped to be the Union general
yeah,
of
yeah, he was tapped. Yeah, yeah. Lincoln went to him first, even before
which was
Grant.
a smart decision, by the way, because had Robert E. Lee been the general of the army for the Union, the war would have been over in like quickly.
Yeah, like 3 months tops.
Yeah, it would have been over.
Yeah, but yeah, Robert E. Lee, another person who I wrongly gets vilified. Um, yeah, he said like, yeah, I will not take arms against my countrymen, talking about
Virginians.
Virginians because he is from Virginia, and so yeah, just like the way that we talk about ourselves and describe ourselves. It's like, yeah, me and Robert, I mean, we wouldn't think
We don't
we
sell.
wouldn't
We
think
don't
we
call
wouldn't
ourselves
think to call
Californians.
ourselves Californians. We just think of ourselves as Americans, but you know, California is as big as some countries.
The other thing too that I found kind of interesting, because you know how like everyone talks about like, well, if California was its own country, it'd be the sixth largest economy in the world. You know, blah blah blah. It's like, well, first of all, our state is fucking broke, so no.
Yeah,
But anyways, but using that logic, he was saying is like, had the southern states been allowed to,
secede
secede, they would have been the fourth largest economy in the world at
at
that,
at that time. Yeah,
because they held all the money and all the power.
right. They held all the resources. Yeah, like the North had manufacturing or whatever, but you can't manufacture stuff out of nothing.
Yeah,
Like so you're not making cigars, if you don't have the tobacco. You're not making
close because you have
clothing. You're not making clothing if you don't have the cotton. It just
it's and like so stuff like that's like and it's not because everyone thinks, oh, it was slave labor that it was. That's the reason why the economy was so strong because they didn't have to pay their workers. Blah blah blah. And like I was like, no, you morons. Not like I said, like the amount of like actual like plantations and like slave owners was so nil. Like and like that population, they always talk about, oh, there was millions and millions of slaves. Like there wasn't. And
Right.
trust
Yeah.
me,
And I mean,
we're
yeah.
not saying like we're not like saying like, oh, slavery is good, like we love slavery. No, no one likes that. Obviously, like no one's saying that that's a good thing. And they were on their way because of inventions like the cotton gin and all these.
Yeah. Or like even steam power, steam
Yeah,
engines.
slavery was becoming obsolete. Like it was going to become a point where it's like we don't need you anymore, and they were gonna get rid of it. Eventually, it was going to happen.
Right. I mean, yeah. But something that they don't talk about is like the average white person in the South didn't like slavery, and not just because they thought it was a moral wrong, but because it took jobs away from them. You know.
The And the other thing too is that they some of the stuff that was happening up in the north, which is here we talk about with like the north not necessarily being the good guys, is that there was certain legislation that was being proposed in Illinois where Lincoln was from while he was like a when he was in Congress and like what some of the positions he was in there, and they were voting to codify slavery forever, and
Oh yeah, in
Lincoln
Illinois.
every fucking time. Whoa. And that there are records of that too, by the
Mm-hmm.
way. So
Right.
you all you have to do is look up the voting record.
Mm-hmm.
You go back to like 1840 or whatever that he was in office in those places. You can, and that's all public, publicly
Yeah.
available.
Yeah.
Fucking scary to think about.
Yeah. And what is it? Like the whole like Emancipation Proclamation.
It
What
was
is
all
this?
bullshit.
It's all
It,
bullshit because it
it's
didn't
just
it didn't
legislation.
apply it didn't apply to the northern states.
No,
It was only the southern states because what was it? What Lincoln was trying to get to happen was a slave revolt essentially.
yeah, crazy to think about. Which
Yeah.
is also stuff that was,
Because
happened
people
in
forget
southern.
like because
Also
people
happened in
forget people
southern
forget that
America.
people forget that there were still slaves in the north. Like yeah, they're like the northern states like like slavery was becoming
What, Andy? I thought
was
I thought this. I thought those were free states.
well, there you go. You'd be mistaken because yeah, there was still slavery up in the north. Yeah, it was less prevalent because the north had more technology, and so there weren't it wasn't as though families had like plant didn't have there weren't as many plantations up in the north, right?
So
Like
essentially, the
and
Underground Railroad was useless.
yeah.
I mean, I guess unless they're going out to Canada, but who,
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, yeah, just because you make it to the north doesn't mean you're free. Because again, after the Emancipation Proclamation, that was only supposedly, or it was only supposed to affect the South. But again, Razorfist makes the point again, like, you know, Lincoln was trying to exert power where he had none.
yeah,
Because
that's
they, because he, cause, yeah, because he again, because he could have made all sorts of proclamations. He's like, all right, you have to wear hats on your shoes, but it's like it doesn't matter because like there's
and
no
hamburgers
backing.
have to eat people.
Yeah, but but yeah, like he had like since Lincoln had no authority, the Emancipation Proclamation meant nothing, and it only applied to the southern states. And again, and so like all the slaves up in the north, it didn't free them.
God, I mean, it just like I said, people don't realize how muddy this whole time period was. It's not like I said, there's no like good guys or bad guys or whatever. It's a really messy situation,
Mhm.
and the people that you would think are Yeah. Yeah. Just those are the things I found super fascinating about the video. I'm definitely gonna watch it again because
Oh
I
yeah,
kind of
me too.
wanna I gotta
I
go through
mean,
this.
I don't usually do this, but I'm gonna take notes.
I'm gonna take notes too because I want to go. I want to look at like some of his sources because I want to go and look myself.
Right,
You know, not
right. Because I don't want to take, you know, I don't want to take for granted uh, the information being presented to me because that's that'd be just as wrong as me taking the word of particularly now the mainstream media. Just taking what they say and say, oh yeah, this is 100% true. Yeah, yeah, it's totally different what Joe Biden did than what Trump did with the documents, or oh it's like Joe Biden left Afghanistan in the right exact way. It doesn't matter that he left billions of dollars or trillions of dollars worth of military equipment behind. Yeah, so I mean, I only bring this up because you know independently, me and Rob have come upon information that does support the things that Razorfist says, and it's super interesting. It's very compelling, the information that Razorfist
yeah. It's like
presents.
don't I say go into this with an open mind.
Uh-huh.
Kind of if you we, because that time period it's a lot more muddy. Take your understanding of whatever you learned in like in school. That's more like that's kind of the flowery rose colored bullshit. Like that's not true. That time period is much more muddy and much more complicated than your teachers told you about.
Right. Yeah. What you
Yeah,
represented was like the baby food of like history. Like
exactly.
easy to digest. Very little nuance. It's like this or that.
But the don't just like discount like what he's saying because first of all, he's very well sourced and you could easily go check oh well he sourced this thing but that's not what it's saying. Okay, great. If that's the case, then I'll be like, okay, well, yeah, okay, maybe he was wrong. His sources are wrong. Like what he's showing us is wrong. So then he's wrong, and then then you can throw that out.
Right. There's no problem.
Um, but I think what he's saying is extremely interesting. And hell, this is a much more interesting thought exercise than like worrying about what Greta Thunberg is doing over in Germany. Who gives a shit? Um, or what Zelensky is doing and like trying to create World War III and with his dumbass like comments and bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this
Or
is
even
more
yeah, or
interesting.
like the whole like yeah, or the Kevin McCarthy speakership thing.
Which I don't. I also like. Okay, great. We have another loser as our Speaker of the House. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Uh, because he's awful too.
Yeah. I
So
mean, when you have to go through what is it, 16 rounds of votes to become speaker?
yeah, you're not. That means that you're not good.
Yeah, that means you suck, bro. You suck.
Some people are trying. Like they voted. Like we're gonna vote for Trump for Speaker of the House. What are you doing, bro? What what kind of dumb like what the
Well,
fuck are
no,
you
I mean, yeah, the whole Gets thing. That was
sorry.
just a yeah. That was a just. I mean, that was not a serious joke. I mean, that was not a serious vote. Okay, he
Oh,
was just
I
doing. He
know it
was doing.
wasn't.
Yeah, he
Like,
was doing that to stick it to Kevin McCarthy. And
oh,
interestingly
okay.
enough, you don't need to be a congressman to be elected Speaker of the
No,
House.
I know that, but it's just like I don't know. Matt Getz, like I kind of like. There's something that's like let's let's because I'm all for like not having Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House because I think he's awful.
Mm-hmm.
But like let's try a little bit better at this
I don't know.
point.
Well, I mean, yeah, I agree. Kevin McCarthy, I don't give a shit. He sucks. But those 20 Republic, like they're literally being called terrorists, right? These 20 Republican congressmen. But I give him props for holding out and like getting concessions from this guy. and not just like, oh yeah, handshake deal, wink wink, nudge nudge. No, like it's on the record. Like you promised us this, you better give us this. And so
Yeah.
so I do tip my hat to those 20 representatives who held the line and be like, no, bitch, like you want the speakership, we have to get something in return.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like I said, I just think that this is an interesting thought exercise.
Yeah, of
Um,
course, yeah.
and don't be afraid to think about this stuff. Like we've had some really interesting discussions about like how when it came to like Brown versus the Board of Education.
Hmm.
Like we obviously everyone talks about the students and like the the desegregation of schools,
Hmm.
um, and all that stuff. Like, and so we always talk about the students, but like we don't know what was happening in those segregated schools and the black schools, and what happened to the black teachers. That's kind of an interesting thought exercise. What did happen? Okay,
Right.
hold on.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
be right back.
yeah. All right. Yeah, I'll just pick it up. But yeah. Well, as Robert was saying, it was like we're just we're this is just a thought exercise, really. Because again, we haven't verified ourselves the information presented. Um, but even just playing around with ideas, there's nothing wrong with it. All right, I think it's still legal. For how long, I don't know. But yeah, when we were talking about the desegregation, it's like but everyone talks about like, oh, the kids, yeah, the kids. There's like that picture of like the what is it, after the decision came down, the four black kids or whatever being escorted by the National Guard into school. But it's just like, okay, the kids got integrated, but what about the teachers? And then that goes into a different that goes into a completely different rabbit hole. Um, it then goes into like possibly the destruction of the black community because when you're basically the whole thing with integration, that's basically forcing association, you know, and and I mean one of the rights enshrined in the Constitution is association, but with like the whole civil rights thing and the desegregation, it's like now you're saying no, it's like no, there wasn't a law saying that you must uh, be with your own people, but now what am I saying? Um, there wasn't a what is it? Yeah. So okay. So yes, association. The government is now saying that you have to interact with people. It's no longer your choice or interactions of or voluntary interactions. Um, and so now it's like you don't. There was no law saying that you must go to black uh, run business or white owned business. You must go to white owned businesses. But then there was no law saying that you couldn't have a black business, right? And in those communities, black people are getting crazy rich. They're starting their own businesses. They're starting their own, their own grocers, their own mechanic shops, their own the dry cleaning business. You name it, right? But after integration happens, a lot of those businesses get shuttered because now what is it? The blacks didn't want to maintain their own businesses. They just wanted to go to the white businesses. That's a losing move in my opinion. You know, if you think about any successful minority group, they've always created their own thing. That's why you have your Little Italies, your Chinatowns, your Koreatowns. Just think of any ethnic enclave, um, and you'll have success. But why isn't there outside of like kind of like the big ones like Compton or Inglewood, Baldwin Hills? There's no strong desire to go to those neighborhoods. Um, Uh, so you really have to think like it's not just what you gain, but like what is it that you lost? And these are the types of thought exercises that me and Robert like to engage in from time to time because it's keeps your mind fresh. Keeps it doesn't lock you into binary thinking, um, uh, and that way you're not easily tricked by propaganda that's being spewed on mainstream media or uh, or you're not bullied into thinking a certain way. Vis-a-vis the vaccines and like you know I did not want to be a black sheep, all right, in my family. I did not want to be the one standing up saying, it's like, you know what, I don't feel like taking, this particular vaccine. And that's really what it was. I wasn't saying that all vaccines are bad or whatever, but again, doing a little research on my own and just like the kind of the breakdown of like the effectiveness of certain vaccines, like, it's not really looking good, bro. Um, but I mean now, here now they're coming out with they're doing their revelation of method where they're talking about like, oh, could the vaccines cause myocarditis or stroke or heart attack? Oh, well, we're gonna look into it now, as opposed to just remaining skeptical and being like, I don't think I don't think this vaccine is necessarily the right for me, or maybe taking pumping the brakes a little bit on it and just be like, I'm waiting for more information. There's nothing wrong with that. Being skeptical, being open-minded to new ideas, or a different perspective isn't a bad thing at all. And I think that's one of the things. Uh, that's one of the things that we recommend on this on our channel. Is open-mindedness and even just like and testing of ideas. If it you know it, if something that I held to be true, didn't necessarily wash out through scrutiny and through testing and and just like and through thought experiments like this, like the whole Brown versus education, anti segregation laws. I don't think I would necessarily be in a bad place. Um, so yeah, so I I'm gonna link after this stream archives. I'm gonna link Razorfist video in the description, and I would recommend watching it just for the sake of watching it, and maybe being introduced to some new ideas or some new information. Again, I'm not saying that, oh, like this is the truth, and it's like mount up, patriots. That's not that's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying have an open mind. Check out this information, and just kind of think about it. You know, think about what you've been told. What you perceive. Doesn't line up with things as you know it or understand them, or could this possibly be true? And I think you will be surprised. And I think and so and I think and and I think you know what am I trying to say? Uh, there's no harm in seeking the truth, right? And the truth is the truth is it's not good, it's not bad. The truth is, and you know And you could take truth and you can make it, you can make your life better. Or I think, and I dare say that truth only makes things better. Truth is uncomfortable. Truth can be painful, but the truth always makes things better. And so I'd say, stretch yourself. Put yourself out there. And make yourself feel uncomfortable, because to only to because taking excluding new information, and only holding onto the old information is not good either, in my opinion. Uh, Still waiting on Robert to get back. I'm really sorry. I was hoping that he'd be back by now, and I'm trying to hide it really well, but I really have to pee. So, um, I guess we didn't really get into you know, kind of our opening catch up time, or banter. This past weekend, what did I do? Oh well, as per usual, I went out and did homeless outreach with my church. It was raining on when we did go out, and so that presented a bit of a challenge, but it was still good, even in the rain, and just experiencing that part of the homeless people's lives, dealing with rain. I mean, I'm blessed to be living inside this house. Robert is blessed to be living in his apartment. Um, and so just getting a little taste of that really puts into perspective the blessings that I have. Um, um, and it was hard, and I didn't grumble per se, but I did. But being out in that rain, and interacting with the homeless people, and just realizing like this is their reality, it definitely put a fine point of how blessed that I am. Um, and just and more, I'm getting a heart for the homeless, and just what they go through daily. Um, and I remember the first. I remember, and I see the homeless, and I see like the tent cities, and and the bum mansions and things like that, and I do get upset that the city government has allowed things to get this extreme. Um, but I still do have compassion for these people. Um, and I try to, I do what I can to mitigate and offset that, and providing resources when I can, and particularly through my church. We're still doing our mobile shower ministry, where we partner up with local charity, San Fernando Rescue Mission, and they bring their shower truck, and they use our water and electricity to and then we also and then our church, we provide the breakfast. It's been really good, and I've been meeting a lot of people, and and it's just expanded my compassion for them. Not my anger or hatred for them. Truly, my compassion is being built up, um, all the time for them. And it and I remember that one of the first times we ever did our homeless outreach, which we call Breaking Bread. Um, First time we tried, we went out uh, for our Breaking Bread ministry. We kind of ran into a NIMBYist. And those of you who don't know, that's not in my backyard. type of mentality where it's like, oh yeah, I want to help the poor, but go help them over there. Um, but when we went out, and we're handing out food, we're handing out some resources, some clothing, a guy came out and was like started yelling at us on like, oh, only enabling them to be homeless and da da da, and I remember just I asked the man, it's like, oh, like, well, what are you doing? What are you doing to help these people? What are you doing to make things better? And immediately started shifting over to, and I wasn't being confrontational. I don't, I was simply asked. I merely asked the questions like, "Well, sir, what are you doing to help these people? Help them to better their situations, or help them even get off the street?" And it's like, "Oh, well, that's why." And he immediately fired back with, say, "Oh, well, that's why it's the city council, the government. We elected them to take care of this." Like, it's like, okay, but they're not. And so, why aren't you? Why aren't you, helping these people out? Um, help them better their situations, help them get into programs, help them with resources, help them get off the street. I mean, if that's really the goal, then why are you yelling at me saying that I'm enabling the homeless? I'm out there with compassion, giving them the smallest shred of dignity of you know a meal and conversation and and even prayer. Like we ask them constantly, like, oh, is there anything you would like to receive prayer for, or would you like us, or would you like to receive prayer for yourself? And a lot of times they say no, but some of the times they say yes. And no one really is desiring to be homeless or living out on the street. I mean, you have a certain contingent, yes, of people who this is a lifestyle for them, but a lot of people we don't, they don't want to be homeless. I mean, one of the our guests that come on our mobile shower days on Wednesday, we helped him get off the street. He was on the street. He had a history of drug use, and you know, he had abuse and abandonment issues. But we helped him get on his feet, and he now has a job, and he's renting a room out of a house. Um, and that is all through our efforts. And and it's not like we're doing anything extraordinary. We just you know extended some compassion, and and just poured out a whole mess of love on him. you know and and he's not the only success. There was an older gentleman, who would come out to our showers, and he eventually got himself into a housing program. Um, and I'm hoping it's gone well, because I haven't seen him in like maybe a year. Um, so okay,
Family business.
right, okay, yeah, just kind of catching people up on my weekend or whatever. Um,
Ah,
but I kind of wrapped up the whole Razor Fist thing. But if you have anything else to add,
no, no, no. I like I said, don't be afraid to just ask questions, look into stuff, and not be afraid that like, hey, maybe the narrative that you grew up with is not the right one. Maybe there's something more unique. Like there's something more there where um, maybe the good guys weren't so good, maybe the bad guys weren't so bad, and maybe it's just a yeah, yeah. There's more, like I said, that there's more there. But that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, we didn't really talk about our weekend either. Andy was talking about stuff he was doing. Um, me, well, Andy and I ended up having dinner yesterday with my wife and another friend of the podcast, James, and we had a good time there, just kind of catching up on some stuff. And my wife's birthday is actually today, although she's in a bad mood, so that's usually how things go. And that's what happens when you turn 30 for the first time. Um, But yeah, other than that, like oh, I actually I was doing some bowling practice yesterday, and I nearly bowled a perfect game. Uh, I bowled a 287, which is a personal best for me. Uh, yeah, I just just bowling out of my mind that day. Um, what else did I do this weekend? Mainly just got caught up on rest. My back's been killing me. I'm kind of still getting a little over that cold that I had. Um, but I'm recovering. I'm good. My back is a lot better. I'm not coughing as much, which is great. So that's a plus.
I totally forgot it was your wife's birthday today.
Yeah, today is the day. You actually should probably text her just so I don't hear like, when did Andy text me? You know how she is.
I might not have to just because of that.
Please don't do that to me. I don't want to have to hear it like 2 in the morning. I'm like, what is it? Like when I'm trying to sleep. Please don't do that to me.
All right, for your sake, I will.
Yeah,
I
do it
will.
for me. Don't do it for
Right.
her. Do it for me.
Yeah. Yes, for your sake, I will. I'll send your wife a text wishing her a happy birthday. Because yeah, she doesn't watch this stream, so she won't
She
hear it
doesn't.
from me. Yeah, she won't hear it here. So I have to text her later. But when we do conclude, please do remind me because I might forget.
Okay, so I'll do that.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, I think we talked to that subject to death. So I think we can move on to the movie review. And oh yeah, I didn't mention it at the beginning, but yeah, just to remind you folks that this month is Revenge Month. So we're doing all revenge-related movies. Last week we did both Kill Bill Volume 1 and Lady Snowblood. Today we're doing, well, the movie's not a classic, but the novel that it's based on
Well,
is a
the novel
classic.
is certainly a classic.
Yeah.
I think this movie is slowly becoming a classic. Because I think when people think of the Count of Monte Cristo movies, I sure there's a '40s version which I've never watched. But
Right.
when you think of the Count of Monte Cristo movie, I think people think of this one.
Right, right. And I'm in the camp of this being the definitive cinematic work of that movie, of that
Oh,
book.
and now it's been a long ass time since I've read the book.
Hmm.
Um, the movie, this particular movie, like I said, I've never watched the original.
Hmm.
This movie does have some liberties to as opposed to the book.
Right.
Um, but I think they all work
Hmm.
and make the movie really good.
Right. Because I know there's they do like a time jump, but not necessarily acknowledge the time jump. Because
You're
in the
right.
in the novel, after he finds the treasure, he goes off like for 3 years and kind of like kind of late what's it Taming of the Shrew himself, and like kind of like trains himself in like that high society stuff. And then also there is a subplot of him uh, kind of romantically linked to this other woman, but he ultimately
Yeah,
forgoes that.
they scrapped all that for the movie.
Yeah,
God, this movie could have been like 3 hours.
yeah, could have.
Well, I actually wouldn't mind seeing this done in like kind of like the epic style, like where it's okay, like we're gonna have a 4 hour movie for the Count of Monte Cristo,
Hmm.
and really kind of like be a pretty faithful adaptation to the book.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I think this version works because I think it's like 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, this is yeah. It is of my opinion that this movie, the 2002 movie, is the definitive iteration of Count of Monte Cristo
Yeah.
in film form. Let me hit y'all with the synopsis and we'll get going. All right, again, Count of Monte Cristo, 2002, starring Jim Caviezel, Guy Pearce, a young Henry Cavill. I think maybe one of his first like big screen debuts. Mm-hmm. Um, the classic story of an innocent man wrongly but deliberately imprisoned and his brilliant strategy for revenge against those who betrayed him. Dashing young sailor Edmond Dantes is a guileless and honest young man whose peaceful life and plans to marry the beautiful Mercedes are abruptly shattered when his best friend Fernand, who wants Mercedes for himself, deceives him.
Is a huge change from the book. Is the this one creates a stronger friendship, or creates the friendship between Fernand and Edmund. Because I think if I remember from the book, it was, yeah. Now Fernand obviously still wanted Mercedes, but I don't think that they were friends per se. Um, but I think there was like Fernand witnessed something, and he used that against Edmond and got him, kind of created this conspiracy to have him imprisoned.
Right. Yeah.
Um, which is, I think, how it happened in the book. Like I said, I haven't read the book since I was like 10,
Mm-hmm.
so so forgive me if I'm forgetting a few of the details.
Right. How dare
Um,
you not be perfect?
I know. Actually, I should probably reread the book. I don't have my copy anymore,
Mm-hmm.
so I'll probably have to buy a new one. Um, but this one they thought that and I think they made the right choice, is creating like, oh, Fernand and Edmund are best friends, and they've had like this like long-standing friendship despite like obviously the societal division between them, like Fernand being the noble, and Edmund being more of like the commoner.
Right.
But they were friends for whatever reason. Um,
Yeah, yeah. It definitely plays better for like the betrayal if they're like friends.
oh yeah, it
Because like
hurt.
if they were just like coworkers or something, it's just like the impact of the betrayal just wouldn't be there.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
also, do you think that at least in the this movie, do you think that Fernand and Edmund are have the same birthday?
that's a good question. I think they
Be-
do because they're the same
right,
age.
right. Because the story that Mercedes recounts, when he's like, trying to get Mercedes to touch his penis. He was like, she was like saying like, oh, remember, for your birthday you got that pony, and then Edmund got a whistle. It's like, and how happy he was just to get
Yeah, you're
that
right.
whistle.
I didn't. That escaped my thinking. But yeah, they must have had the same birthday.
Hmm.
And you were mad because he was so happy with that whistle
Hmm.
more than you were with your pony.
Right. Yeah. And
And
then
that's
yeah.
the whole, and well that's the whole problem with Fernand and Edmund is in the movie, is because like I'm a noble and I shouldn't want your life.
Right. Yeah. That's the admission he makes to Edmund. Like after the betrayal is revealed. Because because Fernand, he comes from like this, a life of privilege, and he descends from nobility and things like that. But he's envious of Edmund's life.
Yeah, and but then you have like the conspiracy that comes with um, Fernand, Villefort, and uh, Daglar.
Mm-hmm.
And Daglar gets like, he's like, how could you demote me over like Edmund? It's like, well, I'm not
Right.
demoting you. You're staying in the same position, but Edmund is getting elevated to captain
Right.
because he made the right decision. He's the
Yeah.
guy that I want. Um, and Villefort, now this is the movie. I don't remember how these characters connect in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like Viafor, like the because Edmund could not read. People don't remember, like you don't realize that, but yeah, Edmund doesn't know how to read.
Mm-hmm.
So the letter is like for him, it's like he's just going off the like what Napoleon is telling him, saying that like, oh, this is just correspondence between old soldiers, whatever. And it's like okay, and he obviously he doesn't read the letter. He just puts it
Yeah.
in his pocket.
He's a
Okay,
trusting dude, as Villefort calls him.
yeah, and uh, uh, Fernand sees that he's talking with Napoleon, and while Edmund is asleep, he reads the letter. and so he knows what's going on. And I'm sure that like this is. Here's the question though: when does Fernand decide to betray him? Was it that night?
No, but I think once he learns that Edmund's been made captain, which now fast tracks his plans to marry Mercedes. I think that's when he.
Okay, so you think
But then
that?
also, I think it also is the influence of Danglars, the first mate of the ship. That it wasn't his idea to try to save the captain. I think he slightly nudges Fernand over to the place that he wants to go.
Mm. And that so when that happened, so obviously like so Edmund gets made captain, and obviously like now we can get married, and he sees that like him and Mercedes are happy, and like you see like this look of like disdain on Fernand's face,
Mm-hmm.
and you think that's the moment where he's like, okay, I'm gonna fuck this guy over, and
Right. I mean, he might not have vocalized it or even said it out loud, either like literally or like in his mind, but like he was feeling those emotions. He was feeling like that butt hurt. And again, like when after the first person after a night of like drinking to like wallow in his sorrows, he meets is Danglars, the guy again who Edmund
yeah,
slights, but not like him personally slights.
he didn't do it on like
Yeah,
as like a way to like fuck Danglars over. He just like
exactly. Yeah, it
he
was like
just
the
made it.
boss. The boss basically said like, yeah, he's a better captain, so I'm making him captain. You could stay on, but and so like yeah, so I think Danglars' envy of it all. This entire movie is about the like the envying of Edmond Dantes.
Yeah. Here's the other thing too, like because so obviously we find out later in the movie that Fernand read the letter,
Mhm,
and so he knew what the contents were.
mhm,
Is that and so he must have known who Clarion was, Monsieur Clarion,
mhm.
that it was Villefort's father. He knew that, I assume, because he's a
Well,
no.
I mean,
He's in the know.
well, I think it would be well, yeah. I think he knew who Villefort's father was because I don't think it was any secret that he was a loyal Bonapartist. I mean, he
Yeah.
even walks around with a cane with the bust of the
Napoleon.
emperor, the
Yeah.
Napoleon. So
Yeah.
it's like and then also yeah, because like they would I mean, yeah, Villefort's not necessarily a nobleman, but
He aspires to be.
well, like yeah, I'm sure like given his status as a prosecutor for the new regime, like he would be within orbit of Fernand.
Yeah.
And so like his family too would also be in kind of like in that orbit too, because seeing as his father was a colonel in Napoleon's army. Yeah, maybe his association with Napoleon has been hushed a little bit, but like I think his reputation would still allow him to travel within that circle.
Right. um. Yeah. Like so there's that aspect of it. It's like I just found like the now that I'm like kind of piecing it together,
Mm-hmm.
I was just like thinking like how these people are connected and like how it was all working. It's like it just it's not like that it was just this conspiracy that just kind of fell together.
Right.
It's
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Like Fernando was using his connections.
yeah, because he is a very connected person.
Exactly. Yeah.
Why
And
do
so
you think
like,
why do you
hmm?
think he was so jealous of Edmund?
Well, I think it's just because like he perceived them as having uh, this good life. He I mean, it's not. expressly stated, but it's like he probably doesn't have like the best relationship with his dad. And plus, also, because he is never shown, but it's stated that he does have an older brother. So his older brother would have gotten the title to the family inheritance. So if his father and brother didn't die in the uprising of Napoleon, which is mentioned in the movie, um, he would have had nothing, right? He would have nothing for himself. That's probably why he was working for Monsieur Morel at the shipping company.
Well, here's the other thing too, because so his dad was ill. I think. Well, he ended up having his father killed. I think that's what happened. But I think he had his brother killed too. Because so there's that conversation that we see like later on between Villefort and Fernand, and they're talking about like how it's like how's your father alive? Unfortunately, alive. Unfortunately, I have the same problem. It's strangers on a train.
Oh, right. It's like maybe we could help each other.
Like,
Okay.
yeah, it's strangers on a train. That's what it is.
Right, because the way Monsieur Morale, the owner of the shipping company, made it sound like the Fernand's father and brother died in the war that sparked when uh, Napoleon escaped from Elba.
I think that was I think that was the excuse that they made, but I
Uh,
think that honestly, I feel that like both of those guys worked together to murder their family members so that they could elevate themselves.
or maybe because there's that I mean jumping ahead here, but there's that scene where Villefort comes to Albert's birthday, and Fernand goes to him and says, "I thought we agreed not to meet, uh, uh,
Yeah.
personally," and I'm wondering if that's because uh, Villefort reneged, kind of like in Strangers on a Train, and he reneged, but by some like happenstance, his father ended up dying. His father and brother ended up dying anyways.
Oh, that's a good. That's an interesting thought too. Somehow, some way, they
Mhm.
died.
Yeah.
I assume it's murder. They
Right.
both
Right.
like they
Yeah.
kind of
But
both like they did the whole like strangers on a train thing and like killed like their family members, each
right.
other's
Yeah.
family
Yeah.
members.
The way I. Oh no. Right. Because initially the way I perceived it was is that since I helped you with Edmund, you could help me with my father.
So yeah, here's what I think because Villefort helped Fernand get rid of Edmund
Mm-hmm.
and um and probably have his family members that were above him killed. So like his dad,
And his older brother.
possibly his brother,
Mm-hmm.
or jailed. We don't know. Well, at least maybe like one of them is jailed, one of them is killed,
Killed. Yeah.
and then we obviously see Fernand shoot Villefort's dad
Mm-hmm.
like in the skull,
Yeah. In the back, and then
in the back and in the
presumably
skull.
in the face.
Yeah. So like I said, that's why I think of this like it's strangers on a train, and it was
Right.
after that moment, like the deed was done, they chose not to meet socially
Right.
anymore.
I mean, yeah, that'd be the logical thing too. But for some reason, like, because knowing the kind of person that Villefort is, I don't see him fulfilling his end of the bargain.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because like when Fernand shoots Villefort's father, he goes, "Oh, young Mondego, why?" And then he said, Fernand says, "Oh, because your son lacked the courage."
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So I
Oh
mean,
my.
if he doesn't have the courage to shoot his own father, then what makes you think he's gonna shoot some a count? The
Yeah.
count, the Count Mondego, and the heir to the Count, Mondego is the
Do you
older
think that
son.
like after like killing like Beafort's dad, do you think he just like killed his own family? Then, if that's the case,
Hmm. Uh, I'm not gonna completely uh, shut up, throw that possibly out the window, but I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, I mean, it's like now this is all speculation because
Right,
we
right,
only
because I'm going off of what I've observed and then also what is it said, because Monsieur Morale, the Edmund's former boss, he tells him, yeah, like, oh, both Fernand's father and brother died in the war, and so and then knowing the character of Villefort, how he's more of like a sneaky like politician type,
yeah.
like he wouldn't dirty his hands like that.
No, you're right. You're right. Um, and now, like I said, I don't remember how it is in the book. Like it's been so long. Like
Mm-hmm.
I know aspects of the book, but like I don't remember like like the minute details like that.
Right.
Um, I think one of the other reasons like why Fernand um, envies or is jealous of Edmund is the guy has so much joy and innocence, and I think that comes from his well his relationship with God,
Mm-hmm.
because Fernand I don't think has any Christian leanings other than like maybe like other than like socially, like obviously everyone's socially, yeah, I'm a Catholic,
Right.
but
Yeah.
I don't really
I know.
actually,
Given the time period, yeah.
yeah. Whereas Edmund really believes, as does Mercedes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
God is everything.
he practices gratitude.
Exactly. And I think that brings a lot of joy to his life.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like even though like he doesn't have the same riches that Fernand does, say, oh well, Fernand got a pony, but crap, I got a whistle. Cool.
Holy crap! Oh my God! This is a whistle.
Yeah. Say about that fucking whistle, and he's like so excited about it. It's like, and Fernand's like, it's like oh, I got a pony. I want the whistle.
Yeah, yeah,
It's kind
yeah.
of like with like Barton Millhouse. It's
Oh
like
yeah, yeah, the Bone
when it's like
Storm.
Bone Storm. Like he's like, it's like why are you playing Bone Storm? It's like I got bored of it. It's like
Yeah, I'm really
I'm
kind of into
really
this
into this
cup and
cup and
ball.
ball now.
Yeah.
It's the same fucking scene.
Yeah.
That's what happened. That's how I imagine that scene playing out with the fucking whistle.
Right.
Oh man. Let's talk a
Sounds
little
good.
bit about Edmund. Like, what do you think about his character? How do you think Jim
Yeah.
Caviezel did?
Oh, I think it was great. Yeah, like when he was like, kind of baby Edmund, and like, he's so, innocent, like like a little lamb. He played it perfectly. Like he was totally convincing as like kind of like the innocent dupe.
Yeah, but
But
man,
then like, but then afterwards, when he gets, imprisoned, and then he meets the priest, the priest, quote unquote, and he Batman's up essentially, like, and then he goes like all like, all mastermind on everybody. It's like, oh dude, like this is who he would have been if his father was a little bit more
tough on him.
well, not tough on him, but better educated, or like if he was like even like a half step better educated,
Yeah,
because what is it? The priest, he was a former soldier
yeah.
who then
Edmund's not a dumb guy. He's
no,
not
no,
dumb.
exactly. I mean, you can't be a dumb sailor. Like, yeah, he doesn't know how to read and write, but he could like probably read a star chart, and like, use a sextant to like find, and plot a course and all that stuff.
Yeah, he's very intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
What
Right.
is it? One, I was saying it's like I think Jim Caviezel likes getting whipped because
I know, oh, dude. This movie might have been his audition for Passion.
I imagine it was because I was I watched this movie with my wife,
Uh-huh.
and I was saying it's like, man, I guess because what got her into this film was like, okay, the main character is the guy who played Jesus in Passion of the Christ. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And then it's like, oh, and then like the antagonist is the guy who played. He's the main star in Memento. Oh, okay, cool. And so it's like you place all the. It's like I like these characters, and it's like, oh yeah, you
I
know
like
who
those
played
actors.
the guy who played Superman? Well, that's him as a young kid. You know, like this is his first role. It's like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah,
cool.
it's that meme of what's it, Vince McMahon? And it's like, it's like progressively getting like more amped up about something.
Yeah,
It's like, I
yeah.
don't. It's like, oh, the guy who played Jesus. It's like, oh, the guy who's in Memento. It's like, oh, young Henry Cavill. It's like, oh.
Yeah. It's like when I was like when he was getting whipped in prison, I was like, oh man, I think he just likes getting whipped.
Yeah.
She laughed at that. But no, yeah, I think I liked Edmund's like the way that he played this role was great because you do believe in his innocence and like his just kind of genuine nature, and he just wants to
Yeah.
do good,
Mhm.
and he's living as he everything is up in his life. You know, he's a sailor. He's got a really hot
Everything's coming up in Edmund.
yeah. He's got a hot fiance, and then all of a sudden, just because he just made the natural decision that he would have made regardless, doesn't matter like what if it didn't even benefit him. He wasn't looking out for his own benefit. He was looking out for the benefit of others, and because of that, he got promoted.
Right.
And because of that promotion, it's like, well, crap, I can get married now, and I can have like I can make a really good living as a captain of the ship. That's all he wanted in life,
Mhm.
and he had it in his hand, and then it was completely ripped away from him out of some because of his
Yeah, petty
maybe
jealousies.
ignorance.
Yeah, petty jealousies.
Yeah,
Ultimately petty jealousies, but yes, like his
little
innocence,
little
his.
bit of ignorance, and definitely because of all petty jealousies from Danglars
Mhm.
and Fernand,
Mhm.
and them utilizing a slick politician in Viafort.
Mhm. Right, who's ready to let him go, but because he knew about the agent who was supposed to pick up that letter, which
Oh,
happened to be his father,
man, had he just said nothing, it's like, oh, I don't know, he would have.
or I forgot. Yeah.
It's like, never. You know what? He never said, and I can't read.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, what is it? Yeah. What was it like? Initially, Villefort said like the only real, if you're guilty of anything, is being naive and trusting.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, man, it kind of every time I see that scene, it's like it breaks my heart because I know what's coming. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, just shut up, shut up.
Just say I don't remember. Remember, like, who was it? Like Fauci, like under oath, he was like, he just said like I don't recall, or
I don't recall.
yeah, it might, or it may not have been Fauci. I'm not 100%, but someone recently was like under oath and was being, and then it was like some like 40 something times they said like, oh, I don't recall,
Yeah.
to questioning from a congressional hearing, congressional body. I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't recall.
Um. Yeah. So, but then he goes into the prison, and you think like when he gets there, like to the well, first of all, he does escape pretty miraculously, and
Right.
of course he runs to his friend, who's a nobleman. It's like, okay, and Fernand, I need help. I need help. They're after me. It's like, and obviously Fernand plays up like, oh, like they're only minutes behind. It's like, do you need money? Yes, yes, I do, because he knows he needs to like get out of town.
Right.
It's like, do you have a pistol? It's like, of course not. Oh,
It's like
good.
good, and that's when he draws the sword on him.
Now I don't remember if it's this fight or if it's the fight at the ending fight between those two, but apparently like one of the no, this is according to Guy Pierce. It's either yeah, this is according to Guy Pierce. Oh no, this is from a Jim Caviezel interview.
Mm.
One of those fights, uh, Jim Caviezel missed his mark and
Mm.
actually stabbed Guy Pierce.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he's like, dude, I'm so sorry. Like, it's like he didn't like it was an accident because those are real swords, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, and he's like, oh, don't worry about it, mate. It's just a nick. And it's like, yeah, he was bleeding pretty bad. Like, so like the blood that you see like in one of those fights is It's like, cause he actually fucked him up pretty good. It's like, oh my god, he felt so bad.
I would imagine it was probably the end fight because in the first fight,
I don't
you know,
remember
and
landing any blows on him.
yeah, no, like he was like, yeah, he's being messed up.
Yeah, but it was just like because Jim Caviezel was recalling his like that conversation with Guy Pearce is like, and he's like, man, that guy was like so tough. He's like, don't worry about it, mate. It's like it's like
Because people forget, but Guy Pearce is an Australian.
I still forget that. Like I
I
always
know,
thought
because his English accent is so good. Like
God,
even in Count of Monte Cristo, his English accent is so good. Like I believe like he's like this snobbish. I mean, yeah, it's English and he's supposed to be French, but whatever. I believe he's like this snobby asshole.
yeah, but then like because obviously the movie that I remember him the most from is Memento,
Right,
and
and there, yeah, his American accent is awesome too.
God, he's so great in that.
Yeah,
Like
it's so
it's like
convincing.
I was like, I thought he was American. And it's like, and I find out he's Australian. It's like, shit. It's like all these foreigners taking our jobs.
Yeah, gerbs.
But oh yeah, no. But then obviously then there's that scene with Fernand. They duel. Fernand kicks his ass, and he goes to the Chateau d'If. Like that's like this. That's like Guantanamo Bay for the French.
Pretty much, yeah. Because like even the warden, Edmond kept like protesting his innocence.
He's like, I know.
And the warden's like, I know, so I know you're innocent, because what was he said? There's hundreds of prisons in France, but they only send the ones that they're really ashamed of here.
Yeah, and it's like they don't like you, so you're here, and but like you're thinking like, oh, he's at least like maybe this guy's gonna be a good guy, like maybe he's not gonna be he's sympathetic towards Edmond, and then he fucking proceeds to whip.
Saint Christopher, he is not.
No,
and for those of you who don't know, Saint Christopher is like the patron saint of lost causes.
And he whips
and travelers.
Yeah, I mean not quite to the point of like Passion of the Christ whipping, but it's still like it's like oh shit, like that's pretty.
Yeah, he does scar him up still.
And the fact that like, so based off like what I'm seeing from the movie, obviously they have the first introduction. They whip him like probably for hours, I assume, and but after that, the only way that like because they talk is like oh well it's really hard to like tell time here, so on the 1 year anniversary we come and we whip you again. It's like so that's how they like tell time. That's our way to like help you tell time. So for literally a year he has no contact with anybody.
Yeah, I mean, save for maybe when they give him food or take his shit bucket.
Yeah, like I said, well, it's twice a day. So like in the morning they take his shit bucket. They don't talk to him, but they take it, and then there's food in the evening. And that like, God, it's not. It looks like that. Like what? I don't even know what the fuck they're feeding them.
Yeah, probably some like vegetable stew.
God, what a fucking horrible existence.
Yeah, and like I mean later on you see like them like getting some protein through eating rats.
Fuck yeah,
and that seems like to be the only source of protein that they get.
So when he first meets Priest, how many years had passed before he came?
I think like 6 years.
God,
I want to say, yeah.
I mean he'd gone insane at that point.
Yeah. Like when Priest comes through the floor of his cell, he has the freak out moment. Where it's like, oh shit, like either I'm going insane or Satan's coming to get me. But when he comes out, and the Priest introduces himself, he says like, oh, they're like, although this doesn't make any sense. to me, like how he's able to count but not know how to read or write. But I'm gonna let it go for right now. But he tells us like, oh, there's like 30,000 something something stones in my cell. And then because the priest has been in
Well,
prison
so
long.
I'm gonna say this. You can like I know there have been people who can do really good math, but they still can't read and write. That is a possibility.
Okay.
So and plus, as a sailor, you need to do some sort of calculations.
Right. Yeah. But for my modern brain, I wasn't able. When I first saw this movie, I couldn't reconcile like he doesn't know how to read or write, but he knows the numbers.
Yeah, like I said, as a sailor, the guy has to do some sort of calculations as far
Right.
as like calculating like the trajectory. Like, oh,
Right.
we're going at
And
like
headings and stuff like that. Yeah.
yeah. So he knows
But
math, but
right.
he doesn't
Okay.
know how to read or write.
Yeah. But yeah, then he goes through that. It's like, oh, they're because the priest has been in there longer. It's like yes, but have you named them? Saying like, have you named each individual stone? And
Fuck.
that's when he has like that breakdown. It's like because he knows he has, and it's like and I think that's like the first bit of compassion that he receives in a long while. It says, the priest goes, oh, don't worry about it. I was as you are now, but
Yeah,
that
you'll get it. You'll get over it.
yeah, but this too will pass. Basically, is what he's saying. What he says.
Yeah, and what a godsend the priest was. And I forget who the actor's name is, but like, man, I
Richard
really
Harris. He was the original Dumbledore in the
that's right.
Harry
He's
Potter
dead,
movies.
right?
Just before he died. Yeah, he played. I believe he did the first two Harry Potter movies, and then he passed
He
away,
died.
and
Yeah,
then
that's
they
right.
recast.
That's why I like this guy so much. He's so great. He's
Oh,
perfect.
and he was Marcus Aurelius in Gladiator.
That's him?
Yeah. Uh
No.
huh.
Oh man. He's in some like really heavy hitting films.
Yeah. I mean, and even prior to late '90s, early aughts movies, he does have a back
I'm gonna
catalog.
have to check this guy out. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's right. Like, oh, man, I forgot he played Dumbledore, and I forgot that I didn't realize that he was in Gladiator. But yeah, I love this character, like the way that he portrayed the priest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Abe Faria. That's his
Yeah,
character's name.
yeah.
Yeah. He just
Um,
named like that. The first name is Abe, like kind of like the Arabic way of saying father.
yeah. Uh, from what I understand too, like a lot of this was filmed in like uh kind of on location in like Malta, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, it look which looks fantastic. But yeah, I love the priest. I like the way that the interaction between him and Edmond, and no, he helped Edmond a lot. Like it's kind of well, it's like okay, we're gonna work together to like dig this tunnel to get out of this prison. Um, and in the same time, you help me, and I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna help you learn how to read and write. I'm gonna help you like gain knowledge, and he helped him solve the mystery of like why would this happen? Why would Viaport burn that letter? What would they
Right.
gain from all this? And it's like and he helped like because Edmund had probably been racking his brain for 6 years trying to figure out this mystery. Like why am I here? Like what happened? Like why did my friend betray me? Why did this happen? And the priest, based off the story he told him, being as smart as he is, it's like, okay, you have these characters. What would they stand to gain from putting you here? Oh, no, no! And like he like flips over the table and starts knocking shit over. It's like, okay, now you know. And when we get out of here, it's like, we'll, you reclaim your life. Um, but yeah, I love the interaction between those two, and um, he talks about like his former life, and as they are getting close to the end, like oh, we're only months away from like the tunnel. Um,
Yeah, breaking through the surface.
yeah, the tunnel starts to collapse in, and it crushes the lungs of Abe Faria, and that is like kind of the catalyst to help the escape attempt. But it also Abe Faria gives him like when they were asked when I said that I didn't know where the treasure, because he was talking about like this great treasure that he had access to, and he told it's like, oh, I'm dying. It's like when I said that I didn't know where the treasure of Spada was, I was lying. And he gave him the map. And it's like, this is where it is, but don't use it for your revenge. Use it for good. And it's like, because he's always talking about how like the vengeance, vengeance. He's talking about like God and like how vengeance is
Right,
not
in the description on Edmund's cell, like God will give me justice.
right. God will give me justice, and like, and even Ave Faria talks about how he's like, vengeance is mine, says the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Don't
Right,
don't
and he was like, yeah, he's like saying like maybe your desire for revenge has kept you alive all these times, and brought you to me.
yeah, and later in another character that we'll meet, it's the same thing. It's like all the idea of like just stop, like don't forget your revenge, like just win what you want back, because he can buy anything he wants.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so anyways, through that, like he finds like obviously like Abe Freya dies, the guards come back, oh he's dead, and he does like a body switcheroo,
Yeah.
you know, kind of wipe your hands,
Yeah,
and he
it's
escapes.
similar to in the Mask of Zorro.
Never seen it.
Oh, really?
No, I've never
The
seen it.
one with Anthony Hopkins and Antonio Banderas.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
Okay. Yeah, oh yeah, it's done by Richard uh, Martin Campbell.
I got. I know.
But
I'm.
yeah, I thought this director Kevin Reynolds did Mask of Zorro, but it's not. I'm just remembering because there's like like similar aesthetic, like swashbuckling and stuff. But yeah, different directors. But I'm sure I'm sure Kevin Reynolds saw. Wait, when did the Mask of Zorro come out?
That's a good question too, because
Hold on.
I know I would like that based off the actors that are involved. I
Uh-huh.
would definitely love that.
Oh, 98. Yeah, so I think Kevin Reynolds definitely saw Mask of Zorro, and thought of like the escape scene when he did Count of Monte Cristo.
Um. Yeah. Well. Okay. So
Yeah, so they do the old switcheroo, and Edmund's able to escape.
and swims 2 miles. Jesus Christ.
I know, geez, talk about treading water. Um,
But when he gets to an island, that's across the sea. Uh, I'm gonna use the bathroom, but like talk about like how what you thought of like when he came across the pirates. What you thought
oh,
about that scene?
for sure, for sure. Yeah, so after Edmund makes his daring escape, and he finds himself on the beach, and he's thrilled and ecstatic, being free. But then he happens upon these smugglers, um, and they're there for a specific reason, because it turns out one of the crew held out some gold for himself and didn't share amongst the rest of the crew. And so, as punishment for that, they were going to, bury him in the, sand at low tide, and let him drown essentially. Um, but the captain of the band of smugglers, he comes into a problem because some of the more loyal friends of of this crew member, are pleading for mercy, saying, "Oh, spare his life, spare his life." But and so them happening upon Edmund, the captain, takes upon he recognizes an opportunity when he sees one, so he challenges Edmund, to come up with a way that he can show a little mercy to Jacopo and let the crew have some fun.
Yeah.
And Edmund and Edmund's asked like, oh, how would I do that? How would I do that? It's like, oh, well, we'll like, it's like, oh, we'll let we're gonna have you fight the crew member Jacopo, I believe is the name, to basically a fight to the death. And so and he says like, oh, well, what if? And then it's like, oh, if you kill him, then you get to take his place on the crew. And then he says, "Oh, what if I don't? What if I beat this guy, but I don't want to be a smuggler?" It's like, "Oh, then we cut your throat, and we're a little short-handed."
Say shit. Okay. Well, I've always wanted to be a smuggler all my life.
Yeah, it's like oh, like in that case, like I would be happy to kill your friend, become a smuggler and kill the kill the trader's pig.
Yeah. But then Edmund kind of like turns the tables, and they fight. He, quote unquote, wins, but he shows mercy. He doesn't kill Jacopo.
Right. Yeah. And because of the like critical thinking training that he got from the priest, he lays it out perfectly. It's like, like he's like, oh, let Jacopo live. He already suffered enough at the prospect of being
buried alive.
If you do, when you do that, you satisfied the men that wanted to see some sport, and you satisfied the friends that wanted mercy.
And now you have two skill sailors.
Yeah, now like, I mean, if you keep, if you allow him, him and I to come aboard, then you'll have another skilled sailor and fighter.
Yeah, it's like, deal.
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say, this is Luis Guzman's best performance.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know he's more known for his comedic performances, but
I honestly,
this role was like so great because it allowed him to stretch to practice some of his comedic skills, but then also showcase his dramatic, serious acting skills.
He was funny, but not ridiculous.
Yes, there you go. That's what
he wasn't a clown in this. Like, he was actually like a serious character, and I'm really shocked that he hasn't had like more serious roles because I think he'd be great.
Yeah, I think the only other, at least the only one other role I can remember, and I didn't even really watch this movie fully, but he was in the remake of The Taking of Pelham 123.
Oh God, that's right.
Yeah.
The remake is awful.
Yeah, I haven't seen the original, so I can't really opine.
Oh, the original's great. That would be that would be good if we ever do our Who Wore It Better month again. That's one I want to choose.
Right.
But I was just like really surprised, like, man, why does this guy not have more serious performances? Because this role, I actually think this is the first role I saw him in, and it's like, man, this guy's fantastic. But now that I know more about like Luis Guzman and like a lot of the roles that he's done all this comedy stuff, which is great because he's funny. I really like him. But like this role, I thought I was like, man, he's so good. Like he should have gotten more roles like this.
Right, and so it goes, it jumps after this scene, or no, and since Edmund saved his life, Jacopo pledges himself to being his man.
Now they said 3 months earlier, but like I haven't like later. Based off like the story, like and like what we see in the dialogue of the movie, It has to be 3 years later because
Not necessarily, because um, not necessarily because he's just coming back to the real world. They could have been hopping around like the Mediterranean this entire time, but not necessarily not make it back to Marseille. And so 3 months, could have been is still lines up with the movie. It's just they do a time jump after they find the treasure. Because if you notice, I don't know if
no,
you noticed.
no. See, here's the thing. Oh, you're okay. You're right. So after like them when they travel to Marseille,
Mhm.
it's 3 months.
Since
That's 3 months.
Yeah, 3 months
But then
since the
Jacopo and
the
Edmond
encounter
find
at the
the
beach.
treasure, and then
Mhm.
it's another 3 years after
Right,
that,
they just don't go through the 3 years from when they find the
which
treasure to
I
when
think
he
is
buys
what,
that big ass house. Because
which I think,
if you notice with Luis Guzman's character Jacopo, like when they find the treasure, he has a shaved head, but when
right,
he goes to buy that
his
fancy
hair is grown.
house, his hair is grown out.
Oh, you're right. Okay, all right, yeah, which I think that does line up with the book, if I remember.
Right, they just don't go into the 3 years of what he was doing, like doing his count training essentially.
Yeah, that they skipped that part.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like
And
that
so yeah,
moment.
when he gets back in, to civilization, essentially, he goes and tracks down his old, people try to find people from his old life, and he's only able to find his old boss, who doesn't even recognize him anymore. Um, and so that's when he gets the info dump about like all the things that have happened.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially what like the old shipping magnet. That was the purpose of his character.
Mm,
Here's the other question I have. Obviously, like Edmund is angry. He wants to humiliate and get revenge for the life that was stolen from him.
mm.
What exactly? This isn't like Kill Bill, right? Like it's not like I don't think he wanted to murder everybody.
Mm.
Was it mainly just to like humiliate and like rip their lives away from them?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Was
Because
that all?
again,
As like as far as like kind of exposing them as like just horrible people, and well, I mean,
yeah,
obviously,
I
it
mean, because yeah,
was
that's what happened to him. Because his reputation was tarnished because someone accused him of treason, and then he was supposedly sentenced, and sent away on the charge of treason.
so in a lot of ways similar. Well, then in a lot of ways, it is similar to Kill Bill. It's an eye for an eye. Obviously, Edmund is alive. He was never like no one attempted to kill him per se,
Mm.
but like his life was ripped away from him. It's like, okay, well, I'm gonna rip your lives away from you.
Mm.
As far as like your reputation, your money, your status.
Yes, but then also physically, because like yeah, he doesn't kill them, but he does send them away. Similarly, I mean yeah, they're not going to Shadow Deep, but they're going to be hauled off the prison and sent away.
Right.
Similar to how he was.
But yeah, it's because I always wonder that too. It's like, was that his design? Like, just was it murder? Was it just like more
Right.
or
Yeah.
less
No.
just
Because yeah. When they go to Monte Cristo and they find the treasure, and Jacopo is like saying like, oh, whatever your problems are, it's over.
they're gone? They're
They're
done.
gone. And then he said like, oh, like it's like, oh, what do you want to buy first? And it's like revenge. It's like, okay, revenge, good. Who do we kill first? And he lists off his enemies list, and then Yakubo's like, all right, I'll go to France. Bam, bam, bam,
Bam,
bam,
bam, bam,
bam.
bam,
And like and then we live the rest of our lives in luxury.
and we spend the treasure.
Yeah, but for him that's not enough because like his he said it himself, death is too good for them. Like they must suffer as I have suffered. So they have to be stripped of their respectable title. They have their name has to be dirt, and then they also
Yeah,
have to go and be imprisoned same way as I am. I mean, not like necessarily in the shadow. Again, not necessarily in the shadow deep, but they have to be in prison. Which is,
Yeah.
I mean, which is pretty respectable. I mean, I'm sure he made an exception for Fernand, who I'm pretty sure he wants his pound of flesh.
Well, I know there's gonna be a duel between them, of course, but like he man, he really fucked Fernand.
Oh yeah.
In a very satisfying way, because Fernand is a dick.
Mm-hmm.
He's such an asshole. Um, even like, VF4 is just doing like what a politician does. Like he's just like a dirtbag already. Same with Danglars. Like he was an asshole right from the beginning. But like the
Right.
fact that like your best, like the guy that you grew up with, who's your best friend,
Yeah. It was in all likelihood like like your brother, like more than your actual brother.
yeah, it's like they're brothers, and he not only betrayed you, but then stole your fiance. Fuck you.
Right.
Um,
So yeah, like yeah, and then that's when his like whole plan goes, springs
and that's
into
really like
action.
kind of like where like because that part of the movie like it does like move pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously like we he kind of ends up like setting up his traps for all these people,
Right. Yeah. He starts
and
insinuating himself into their lives, pretty easily with Villefort, just invite him to a party. But with Fernand, it's a it's somewhat trickier. But he learns that he has a son, which the real parentage is revealed at the end. But
well
I'm sure everyone can guess.
I remember like I was like now I've read the book, so I'm like it I don't remember if that was like a storyline in the book. Um, but for the movie, it's like it's actually like, oh, that's right. It's like oh crap, it's kind of a nice twist. I know my wife was like pretty interested. It's like oh that's a twist. She was like, it's like that's his
Right,
kid.
but it's like because like when you see him, you can easily think like, oh, he just took after Mercedes because
Yeah,
the actress that they got, is also like dark haired, and I forget what her eye colors was,
yeah,
but like you would just immediately assume that oh, he just takes after Mercedes.
right,
But
right,
like
right.
on second and like after you find out and you see it, it's like oh shit, that's Edmund's kid.
Yeah, and even like because the way that Albert like his actions,
Mhm.
it's Edmund.
Right, and it's Edmund. If he after he gets the training from the priest.
Yeah, had Edmund been educated, that's Albert.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I love like how the traps all get laid. Everyone gets their comeuppance,
Mhm.
and Edmund kind of does get everything that he wants. Normally how these like revenge films work, it doesn't quite work out that way, right? Like it's always seems like like especially like the movie we're doing next week, like dear God, it's like revenge is like a horrible idea. Like why um but even like when you look at like the entirety of like the Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 together,
Mhm.
it feels like revenge is bittersweet. It doesn't necessarily fully satisfy you.
Mhm.
Same as in with like Lady Snowblood, it doesn't really satisfy you. Like you want it, you want these people dead. They deserve to die,
Mhm.
but it doesn't really like fully satisfy you in the end.
Mhm.
And but this film does that. Like you do feel like okay, everything worked out the way it was supposed. Like it's horrible that he lost,
Right. Oh, and it's
16
what?
years.
All the traps are they're very appropriate and poetic justice
Yeah,
because what is it? Danglars accuses him of of taking the note from uh, uh, Napoleon, even though he wasn't even on Elba to see it happen. But and so like he's basically saying, "Oh, I caught Edmund doing this bad thing," but then he's the one that gets
never
caught
there.
doing. yeah, but then Danglars is the one that gets caught doing the bad thing by
Yep.
stealing goods from the ship, and then also um, Villefort, he just like how Edmund just like gives up all the information that he wants. That's what happens to Villefort. He gives up all the information.
And and then with Fernand, he gains all this wealth by betraying everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and yet then Edmund strips him of all his wealth.
Exactly.
And yeah, oh man, this is probably the most satisfying revenge film
Yeah.
because
Easily.
everyone gets what's coming to them. The main character not only does he get his revenge, he gets his woman back, he has his son,
Mm-hmm.
and he is wealthy beyond all means.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets the satisfaction, although he lost 16 years, he's going to live probably another. I think if I was going to, based off how this movie plays out, I think that he lives an extra 16 years to make up for it.
Maybe, perhaps. Um, but I mean, just given the time period, he probably doesn't live that
Oh,
much longer.
well, I'm just going based off like how
Right, I
this
know. In the movie universe, yes, or I'm
in
sure
the reality,
God will
no.
bless him for and give back him his 16 years that he lost.
That's and I think like his entire family lives an extra 16 years.
Right.
And Yako was a part of that family too.
Yeah, I know. Like, like when he says like, "Oh, the only things I care about are walking off
On
this
this
island
island,
with me." That's
I'm
that's
leaving
everybody. Like he cares about Jacopo. He cares just as much as he
out
cares
there.
for
And
Mercedes or Albert.
I don't know if you noticed this. I didn't notice it when I first watched the film, like back when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
But you noticed how Mercedes is holding her stomach. I think she's pregnant
Yes.
again.
Yeah, I caught that too.
I didn't catch that like when I first watched the film a couple times back in 2002, but like I
Mm-hmm.
caught that this time. I was like, oh, she's pregnant, like because they had sex, like a couple nights before that. It's like, oh yeah, she's pregnant,
Right.
or well, a couple months probably before like that last
Right,
scene.
because yeah, I think it's at like a month. I think yeah, it was like a month or maybe 3 months
Two.
later. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Count of Monte Cristo, man, what a great film. Uh, I remember really liking it back in 2002 when it first came out. I saw it on opening night because I liked all the. Well, I mean, I think I watched it because my friend Peter and we watched it because we like Guy Pearce after Memento, and so we're like, oh, Guy Pearce is in another film. We're like, oh, he's the bad guy this time. Okay, cool, let's check it out. And it's like and him and I both like The Count of Monte Cristo as a book because we were book nerds.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to watch it. And it's like, man, this is a good film. I really like it. And yeah, I think they did a good job. They changed they kept the story close enough to the book, but they changed just enough to like make it like more like the language was changed up a little bit, and they added like kind of the friendship element between Fernand and Edmund,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that all worked. I think it made it more accessible to like newer audiences because the book is, it's tough to get through if you're not willing to go through the language, and obviously like we're not reading the book in French, but like it's the the English translation is very flowery and very different
Mm-hmm.
than how we would normally like speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I've read a lot of books around like that time period, the great classics,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, they are not easy to get through just because the language is so different. Like how things that like the way that they say things, we might use the same word, but it's so different from like the context is so different the way
Right.
that it's used. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, it just adds like this extra layer of challenge.
Right, yeah, like it's like when if someone was feeling happy, they might say, "Oh, he was feeling particularly gay that morning." It's like,
Exactly. And it doesn't mean that he wants to have sex with dudes in the butt,
oh, yeah,
but it's about like him being
just
being
asking it.
joyful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But this was your choice, Andy. Why don't you go first on like the rating, unless you have any other like thoughts about it?
Yeah, no, no other, nothing else to add. I love absolutely love this movie. Um,
I think I'm gonna buy the Blu-ray of this. I actually really like this film.
yeah, I mean, if if I was also a collector, I probably, you know what, I might just get it. Just even though I don't really have a Blu-ray player, I just might get it just to get it. Um,
I eventually like I'm gonna try to like go through and like get all the movies that we've reviewed.
mhm,
I've worked on that, although I've been working on getting a collection of like just stuff that I want,
mhm.
stuff that I've seen that I really like, or stuff that I like. Oh yeah, I really want to watch that. But I might have to go through and like go through like our list of stuff that we reviewed, and just like so that way I have all the movies we reviewed, and I can put like a little sticker on there, like oh, we've reviewed this one.
Yeah. Yeah, this movie was so well done. Really well shot. I know I'm usually the technical guy who dings everything for like technical stuff, but it's like I can't like from the way it was shot to
There's nothing wrong with this
there's
film.
nothing wrong with this movie.
Would you
You know.
like, and even like when I was going through like some of like the trivia and stuff, like
Mhm.
um there was no like alternate castings that I saw, so I think like they I like I said, I wouldn't have, but I wouldn't have changed like any of like the actors that were involved. I think everyone was cast perfectly.
Yeah, yeah, agreed, agreed. So I'm gonna give this a 5.
Man, I can't argue with that. Like this is I think this movie accomplished everything that it sought to do.
Mhm.
It's fairly faithful to the book. It has great acting. All the characters are really good. Um, you have, I think, like, was it the guy that played like Monsieur Clarion, the older, like the father of Villefort?
Mhm.
He played in a movie, The Elephant. Have you ever watched The Elephant Man?
No, but I'm aware of it with John Hurt, right?
It's with Anthony Hopkins is in it.
Yeah, I think John Hurt plays the Elephant Man.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. John Hurt plays the Elephant Man. But Monsieur Clarion, that actor, I think, played in it as well.
Mm.
So I heard like because Guy Pearce was like so excited that he's like, "Oh, you were in the Elephant Man," which is one of his favorite movies. But
Mhm.
apparently, he was like super surly and like wouldn't talk to him. Um, but yeah, like the actors are perfect. It's the act like the it was well cast. The actors were perfect. I like the soundtrack. I just
Oh,
yeah
that dude. Oh yeah, he played Freddie Jones, who plays Villefort's father. Yeah, he passed away in 2019.
pretty
Yeah, so pretty
recently.
recently. Yeah.
But I don't have any problems with this film. I think yeah, you're right. I think this is a 5-star film.
Mhm.
I really enjoy it. Um, I think I fell back in love with the Count of Monte Cristo that from 2002. It kind of makes me want to like reread the book,
Mhm.
and it makes me want to go see the the I think it's from 1948, the that version of Count of Monte Cristo, just to see like where it differs.
I'm kind of curious to watch the 1940s version, just because what is it? Because it was referenced in the movie V for Vendetta,
Yes, yep.
and
Um, it's funny. Heidelberg was telling me about that too.
uh,
Like because when I was talking about us doing this film,
uh,
he was asking us like which version we were doing, and I was like, "Oh, we're doing the 2002 version with Guy Pearce and Christian Bale." I was like, "Oh, you should do like you should talk about the 48 version that because that's in V for Vendetta."
mhm,
And, which is another movie that we should review at some point too, because that's an interesting movie to talk about.
mhm.
I don't think I've seen that since that came out.
V for Vendetta.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
What was it 2005?
something like that. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, it's just like very, again, very kind of applicable, kind of like revelation of method in that movie.
Yeah,
Particularly, what happened, what happened in the last few years.
God, yeah. But
But
yeah,
yeah, all right, yeah, that's
this,
our.
this is a great choice, man. I'm glad you chose this. And when we was coming up with the ideas for what we were going to do this month, Count of Monte Cristo was not even. I didn't even think about that, and I was like,
I
once you
know,
said,
yeah, just yeah, because
of
when you like
course,
revenge, I was like, oh yeah, Count of Monte Cristo, that's a revenge movie.
yeah. But yeah, I think I'm going to buy the Blu-ray of this film. I really like this movie a lot. This is a good movie.
Couldn't agree with you more. All right, folks, that's our review for The Count of Monte Cristo from 2002. Both Robert and I give this a 5. It is definitely a movie to watch. You must watch this movie. I command you to watch this movie. You won't be disappointed. The story is great. It's nice and tight. It's the movie accomplishes is everything that it sets out to do.
If you watch it, God will give you justice.
Yes, there you go. All right, beautiful, perfect ending. All right, folks. That's our stream for tonight. I hope you had a good time. I had a good time. I know Rob always has a good time.
I always have a great time. And what next week we're talking about? I Saw the Devil, right?
Is that what you decided on?
That's what we decided upon.
Okay.
Because I want to say we were gonna do Old Boy, but I think that the Vengeance trilogy deserves its own month.
Right. It should be kept together.
Yeah,
All right. So yeah, look forward to that. I Saw the Devil next week. But in the meantime, don't forget to check out the library of other content that we have. The Circular Jerks main podcast, episodes of Nocturnal Transmissions, of course, and Rob's Gaming Show, Up by Up Down. Don't forget to follow us on our various social media accounts, Twitter and Letterboxd at PodcastCOJ, and Instagram at Circular Jerks Podcast. And with all that said, we thank you for joining us tonight. Come back next week and we'll do it all over again. Have
sounds
a
like
good
a
night.
plan to me.
Have a good night.